God, yeah, it's how it been. But that's okay, cause I'm making ends. Don't like me, well, I'm on the road. High speed, chase, that's what I love. Can't see what I can't control. Did it once, yeah, do it once again. Watch my father, yeah, he taught me how to win. Cop new product, money taught me how to spin. Waves like water, music taught me how to swim. I'ma fill my bottle way up to the rim.
Back then, yeah, I never taught it all. Ashes, yeah, let them bridges fall. I've been way better than before. Posted with my cash till it's all.
Wait, are you fucking kidding me, dude? Oh my god, you are such a pathetic piece of shit. Shame on you. Shame on you, you fucking liar. You fucking filth. You fucking absolute dog shit. You fucking piece of shit. You fucking garbage motherfucker. What a fucking liar. What a fucking measly little liar, dude. What a fucking measly little... Holy shit. What a fucking measly little liar, dude. Holy fucking shit, dude. Fuck you. You fucking piece of shit. You fucking garbage motherfucker. I cannot believe it. You fucking piece of garbage. You know these motherfuckers are such liars, dude. I despise these people so much. God, why are you such a fucking horrible monster, dude? Shame on you, and shame on your fucking parents for literally bringing to this world such pathetic, filthy spawn. You disgusting, vile piece of garbage. What a fucking liar. What a fucking measly little liar, dude. What a fucking measly little... Holy shit. What a fucking measly little liar, dude. Holy fucking shit, dude. Fuck you. Oh my god. Oh, this is disgusting. So fucking disgusting. What a pathetic worm, dude. Shit, dude. Fuck you, dude. Fuck you. Disgusting. You disgust me, dude. Hashtag my dick, dude. Lying for clout ass motherfucker, dude. What a fucking liar. What a fucking weaselly little liar, dude. What a fucking weaselly little... Holy shit. What a fucking weaselly little liar, dude. Holy fucking shit, dude. Fuck you. What a fucking liar. What a fucking weaselly little liar, dude. What a fucking weaselly little... Holy shit. What a fucking weaselly little liar, dude. Holy fucking shit, dude. Fuck you.
You said some things you didn't mean. I'm sure I did that too. Oh, baby. Egos clashing, dreams crashing. Whatever happened to me and you? From lovers to strangers, when everything changes. Oh, baby. When we tear out the pages and only one word is left. Please let just be quiet until the next riot. Just give us some time for the wounds to heal. What is broken is broken. Let's just leave it for now. We need some perspective just to understand how. What is broken for now. What is broken for now. I think we both need to grow, so that we need not to know. Maybe doubt, maybe ask, maybe understand at last. From knowing to asking, from tearing to building, from thinking to feeling, from hurting to healing. Please let's just be quiet and let the silence speak. Just give us some time for the wounds to heal. What is broken is broken. Let's just leave it for now. We need some perspective just to understand how. What is broken for now. But maybe tomorrow we will know how. Yes, maybe tomorrow we will know how. Oh, maybe tomorrow we will know how.
Do not come. Do not come.
Okay, this is the most disappointing video I've ever seen. She literally attacked the two things that I like. I'm a coomer.
Yeah. Yeah. I need a smoke where the matches. I'm a king, fuck your status. Getting dough, I pay no taxes. I'm a star in all fashions of the word, bro. I'ma flip the bird, bro. Coming through in foreigns and all you hear is skirt, huh? All polo and some white shoes. Funny thing now is I'm a nice dude, but when you cross that line, it ain't the right move. And my tender bitch is what I like knows. Oh yeah, can you feel that? I'm giving y'all that real rap. I'ma get the money, make the deal fat. Making hits with a steel bat. The Audi Quattro or that Monte Carlo. Which whip will I whip tomorrow? Got 6 chicks down to sip the bottle. Go coast to coast so I can ship the cargo. I don't really know if these people keep it real. I'm just telling all you fuckers how the homie really feel. And I'm looking up to God. Can you tell me what's the deal? I'm just waiting for your answer at the altar where I kneel. I need a smoke, where the matches. I'm a king, fuck your status. Getting dough, I pay no taxes. I'm a star in all fashions of the word, bro. I'ma flip the bird, bro. Coming through in foreigns and all you hear is skirt, huh? Let me get the money, I see you bitches acting funny, can't take nothing from me, nah, rapping blunts like mummies, yeah, we freed the homie when he caught a bid, I roll around, you can't stop the kid, truth be told, I'm hot as shit, just say what up when you spot a kid, real talk, I'm trying to speak the truth, I stay loyal, bro, to my roots, since 15, I've been in the booth, that's 16, I was on the move, used to ride in that old Chevy, now we out here show ready, I can see the bull, you're so petty, you can have your shine, my glow heavy, I need a smoke, where the matches, I'm a king, fuck your status. Getting dough, I pay no taxes. I'm a star in all fashions of the word, bro. I'ma flip the bird, bro. Coming through in foreigns and all you hear is skirt, huh? Sunnyside.
I took people's drop boxes. I was like, "Are you a conservative, ma'am?" And like an old lady would be like, "Yeah, I'm a conservative," and I would fucking deck her, take her ballot, and just rip it apart right in front of her face. I was like, you're not allowed to vote this way in California." That's right, bitch. I got a funny one for you. Okay, here, look at this.
With what we were seeing in the polling data going into this election about what people cared about and the order in which they ranked it. So we have had a lot of questions throughout this time about new voters, people that hadn't been in there before that were perhaps not getting captured by the polling. So maybe this is a sign that we're going to see a little bit more of that tonight than we expected.
This.
We obviously don't know yet.
And you know what's missing from this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 top 5 issues? Democracy.
Hey, hi, hello. What's up, internet? How's it going out there? How are you, tiny people in my computer? Hope you're well. I have a massive fucking migraine, so sorry for being late. I'm doing what I can, okay? We're just out here trying to survive. Yeah. It's so bad, like... I hate when I have such a bad migraine that it fucking wakes me up at night. And then it, like, keeps me from sleeping good, too, like... I have all these, like, anxiety dreams. And it just makes it worse. But been trying to hydrate and caffeinate my way through it. That's pretty much all I've had going on. It's just dealing with this migraine shit. My cats are very sweet though. Makes me feel better when I cuddle a kitty. So we didn't get through last week's Dark History, and there's already a new one. So we're gonna start with that. And then Maggie Mae Fish made a really interesting, I don't know, essay about like the rabbit hole of off-gridders. So there's that. Oh yeah, and also I wanted to go over the Willow Project. That's like a little bit of an older story, but I didn't get to it. So I guess we should do it. Do it to it.
Hi friends, I hope you're having a wonderful day today. My name is Bailey Sarian and I'd like to welcome you to my study and to my podcast, Dark History. This is a chance to tell the story like it is and to share the history of stuff we would never think about. So all you have to do is sit back, relax, and let's talk about that hot, juicy history goss. Okay, so my friend told me this story and it was, wild, juicy, so many ups and downs. But like, I don't want to start any drama, but of course I was like, I have to share because it's kind of like, you know, related to the topic I want to discuss today. So my friend, let's call her Barbara. She was working at this small company and she was super tight with her team, including her boss. I mean, everyone knew everyone's friends and everyone knew everyone's partners. Well, one day, Barbara was just going out and about, just going to grab some food on her lunch break. And she saw, get this, her boss's husband making out with another woman.
What?
I mean, a little tongue and everything, okay? I mean, it was like they were being sloppy because they were out just in public like they didn't even care. So my friend, the one who was seeing this all go down, she said she wasn't shocked because, I don't know, she's always got a bad vibe from her boss's husband. Anyway, Barbara was like, oh my God, don't even look at me. Like she's trying to hide her face. And then she got the hell out of there before her boss's husband saw her. So in her mind, she's trying to justify it. Like, oh, you know, maybe her boss actually knows. Maybe it was his grandma. Like, I don't really know the whole details, you know? But what she did know was that they were not in an open relationship. The boss and her husband were definitely together. So Barbara, I don't know, she marched her ass back into the office and spent the rest of her lunch break eating like 6 bags of Sun Chips. And she was trying to figure out like, what the hell do I do now? She wanted to tell her boss, but at the same time she was worried. I mean, her boss may potentially take it as a power play. I mean, is that something you would want to even hear from an employee? And of course, on top of all of that, she was worried she'd lose her job or even just create tension at the workplace. But she ends up telling her boss. Bold! And I guess her boss in return was like, with just a very straight face, was like, thank you for telling me, Barbara. And then that was it. I mean, her boss didn't fire her, but she said that things were definitely weird between them afterwards. And it just kind of made the relationship with the rest of the team a little weird as well. It also ruined that very relaxed work environment that Barbara liked at the office. It ruined it so much that she actually eventually quit. And then in return, she was like, I wish I never even told my boss. Very mixed opinions on this one, right? I mean, I don't know. What's the right thing to do here? But in the end, should Barbara even be?
Nah, I would stay out of it, honestly. I would just pretend like I didn't see anything. It's none of my business.
Be punished for telling the truth? I don't know. Well, this got me thinking about people who do this, but on a way more serious level. Like, no disrespect to Barbara. What she found was very juicy and interesting. But this is like serious where I'm talking about actual like whistleblowers. In my experience, the word whistleblower gets people like all hot and bothered, and not in a good way. I mean, everyone's got like all types of different opinions on them. So naturally, I was like, why? What's the deal? Well, the definition of whistleblowing is essentially sounding the alarm when you think a person or people in power are doing shady stuff, especially if it's criminal.
I feel like the phrase is kind of self-explanatory. You blow the whistle like you're a referee, right? Yo, what's up? How's it going?
Simply put, if you see something, say something. I mean, it sounds pretty simple, right? Well, today, we're talking about more recent and shocking whistleblower stories that may have changed the course of history. From secret wars to chemical attacks on Americans, to a housewife who probably saved hundreds, if not thousands, of lives. Whistleblowers, are they American heroes?
Just ate some tacos. Hey, I made tacos the other day. It's so good. Write some scripts. Cool. I'm okay. I have a migraine, so I'm just trying to soldier through.
Or American traitors? It's a hot debate. Joan here is dressed up as our whistleblower. You look so good, Joan. She got a new costume designer. That's where all her budget's going. Her outfits. Anyways, we love a theme. There are some definitely more famous, or maybe
some brain Botox. Yeah, I wanted to try that. That was the next thing that my neurologist was suggesting before he stopped practicing up here.
Say more successful whistleblowers. There's one man named Mark Felt, but he is better known to the world as Deep Throat. Now, this has nothing to do with that famous movie we mentioned in the porn episode. Deep Throat was the code name of the guy who blew the whistle on all the shady stuff President Nixon was doing. Yeah, him. Which, side note, but could you imagine getting that code name? They couldn't pick anything else. Deep Throat? Anyway, there's no Watergate without Deep Throat. Then we have Linda Tripp. You know, the woman who snitched on Monica Lewinsky and President Clinton. Oh yeah, and then Harry Markopolos. He blew the whistle on that illegal stuff the Ponzi scheme guy Bernie Madoff was doing. But blowing that whistle in America goes all the way back to the start of our country. The first American whistleblower was actually from 1777, but it wasn't until the 1800s that whistleblowing became like the good American thing to do. Now, America, she was struggling a little bit during the Civil War, and she could not afford to hire enough people to help out.
Just struggling a little bit. America was just like having a little bit of a struggle sesh. That's it.
So the military needed tons of stuff, and that means it also needed a ton of people to manage where they were getting that stuff from. So I'm talking about like food, weapons, and even military uniforms. But during the Civil War, something wild happened. These soldiers, they get their new uniforms shipped to them. So they put them on, they're like, yeah, new uniforms, yeah, and they're high-fiving. And then they head out to battle. And then it's like time to go, so they're racing towards the enemy. But it actually starts to rain that day, which is not a big deal, except that the rain actually started to dissolve their uniforms. Yes, they were falling apart. They were like melting.
What?
They were not Hugo Boss quality, that's for sure. So yes, very big problem. Companies at this time had no quality control, so things were just really like flying under the radar. There were even fake contractors who sold bullets that were made of sawdust to soldiers. So the government decides, maybe they need some watchdogs like that are on their side and people aren't getting scammed. The year 1863 rolls around.
How the fuck do you make a wallet out of sawdust? The fuck?
And then the government, they passed something known as the Lincoln Law. So the government wanted more people to get involved in keeping these military contractors in check. People were encouraged to do it because it was the good American thing to do, but also because, and more importantly, they could get a really nice little payday from doing it. So how it worked was like, okay, let's say someone blows the whistle saying a company is selling the government cantaloupes that were painted like cannonballs, you know? Great scheme. The government would sue them,
Classic.
and if they won $1 million in damages, you, the whistleblower, would get to take home half of that. That's a good deal. So you would get like a great $500,000 for calling out a company who was doing something shady. Hello? People were like, where do I sign up? So early on, the United States government was very supportive of whistleblowers. I mean, they were important. And they saw it as like a way to protect the nation. And it sounds so like sweet and wholesome. Unlike today, though, being a whistleblower is like having a scarlet letter, just maybe a W instead, just sewn right onto your shirt. And it's definitely like not as straightforward as it was back in the 1800s. We always tend to overcomplicate things, don't we? Not every whistleblower needs to be some like Washington, D.C. insider with high-level classified intel. I mean, we'll get that in today's story, but what I'm saying is that whistleblowers can come in all different shapes and sizes, and yeah, sometimes the most effective examples are the ones that people in power totally overlook. Someone who was simply caught up in a scandal saw something and then said something. Like our first example of a whistleblower.
See something? Say something. You could be a whistleblower too.
Leanne Walters. So once upon a time in a city called Flint, Michigan, things were fantastic. In the mid-1900s, it was like a place where people worked building cars for General Motors. So families raised their kids there, and the quality of life was just overall great. But over the years, as more car factories moved overseas, the town started to go downhill. The population was cut in half, homes were abandoned, and crime was spreading fast. By 2011, the city was looking at the numbers and they realized that they were $25 million in debt. So Flint's like, dude, we need to fix our budget because we're in a lot of debt. All right. So the governor ends up stepping in, and he knew that Flint was getting their water from another city nearby, Detroit. But they could save a lot of money if they just got their water from their own river instead. So in 2014, Flint switched their water supply to save money. It was like, oh yeah, problem solved, we did it. But in the end, it was actually a really bad move. Almost right away, Flint residents started complaining that all the water from their taps were just a little weird. It had a funky taste. Some of their people's water legit just looked brown. Others said that the water looked like dark cooking grease, kind of like bacon grease. It smelled bad. Everyone living in this town was like, hello, people should probably fix this. But nobody was. That's when Leanne Walters steps up and decides to sound the alarm. Leanne, who lived in Flint for decades, was a medical assistant before becoming a stay-at-home mom with 4 kids. She had always been known by friends as being a very curious, persistent, and smart woman. I mean, if it was the 1700s, they probably would have called her a witch, but we're not in the 1700s. So when her water first started to turn brown, I mean, she believed the Flint government when they said like, hey, you guys, don't freak out. It's a filtration problem. It'll be fixed in a few days. You know, but a few days came and went, and the water just got worse. Leanne started to notice an unusual rash that was like forming on her kids. Then Leanne's own hair started falling out in the shower. And not only that, her eyelashes started to fall out. Now, on top of all of that, everybody in the house had horrible stomach pains constantly. And it wasn't just Leanne's family. After going door to door, she found out that other people had fevers over 104 degrees, and even scarier things were happening. Some people were straight up going blind for what seemed to be no reason. And on top of that, people were starting to get diagnosed with cancer. So Leanne is starting to realize something they all have in common. The weird water. Hello. And no matter how many people complained about the water, again, nobody was doing anything about it. The city officials continued to ignore it and said the brown water was fine to drink. Yeah, Sometimes they would even say that it was just a problem with Leanne's pipes in her own house. You know, great. Well, by January 2015, there were protests outside of City Hall. And at this point, Leanne activates her powers as an educated medical assistant to get to the bottom of, what was going on her own. She's like, shoot, like no one else is going to do it. So I'll do it. Shit. So she would spend the next few months going through a bunch of different documents about the Flint water system. This is when she found out that Flint was in major debt, and the government decided to cut corners and save money by serving their residents cancer water. What? Huh? Yeah. So I know, like, why are there cancer chemicals in the Flint water in the first place? Well, the whole problem with the Flint water was that it was where all of Flint's car companies dumped their chemical wastes. It was essentially the city's trash can. Unfortunately, very sadly, yeah. And then it was discovered that there was lead in the water. Yeah. So there's a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
And like, look,
Totally
little
fine,
fun
though.
fact.
Totally safe, totally fine. Don't ask any questions.
That less than a grain of sand worth of lead is enough to kill a person. Yeah.
Jesus.
It's even poisonous to touch. Too much lead can lead to heart and brain diseases, mental health issues, hearing loss, behavioral problems, high blood pressure, and reduced fertility. And then, of course, death. So they found out that the lead in the Flint water was 800 times the legal limit, which officially classified the water as toxic waste. So they're legit drinking toxic waste. You understand? You got that. So this news comes out and everyone in Flint is like, what? Like, what would you do? I don't know. I would be pissed. Now, this didn't just apply to the water that was coming out of the faucets. It wasn't just like the drinking water. I mean, you couldn't shower. You couldn't do laundry, make spaghetti one night on spaghetti night. You couldn't go out to eat because most likely they're using the same water you are. Coffee, baby formula, ice. Oh, no, like everything was bad. But the residents in Flint, I mean, they were like, hello, we still have to live. So they had to figure out how to deal with all this. People started literally bathing their children with bottled water. Because of how many water bottles were being used just to bathe, residents would line up by the hundreds outside of churches for bottled water deliveries. This was the new reality for the residents of Flint. I mean, it was just getting ridiculous. And it wasn't long before it started to get national attention. Now, after Leanne sounded the alarm, it wasn't like, yay, the water's fixed, yay, There was still a lot more work that needed to be done, but she did get the ball rolling and made a ton of noise. And soon, the name of Flint, Michigan was all over the news. And then the whole issue got a big-ass boost.
It's so fucked that she had to draw attention to it. Like, are you kidding me? What the fuck? This shit's so gnarly.
From some big names like Cher and Snoop Dogg. A-listers started tweeting about it, and soon the entire country was talking about this crisis. And everybody wanted to know, like, how the hell could something like this happen? And who was responsible? Well, it didn't take long for them to realize there was one person to blame. It was literally the governor of Michigan. That shithead. Apparently, the governor was warned about the dangers of using the toxic Flint River as a water source, and he was warned a whole year before the switch even happened. He would try to ignore the crisis for like as long as possible. He and his cronies even tried to pay off sick people and whistleblowers in Flint to keep their mouths shut. But I mean, just an idea to throw out here.
Jesus.
Hey, why don't you use that money to fix the water instead? I know. But nobody comes to me to solve these mysteries. But in late 2015, the governor caved and switched Flint's water back to its original Detroit water source. I mean, look, it was too late. I mean, the damage at this point had already been done. So what happened? By 2020, after thousands of kids were exposed to lead-filled water, and a dozen people had already died, some good news, I guess, came to the residents of Flint. Courts ordered the state to replace thousands of bad pipes and ensure Flint had a clean water source with a solid filtration system. On top of this, the state had to pay $650 million to people affected by the crisis. Now, I hope they actually get or see some of the money. Damn, But you know, money's great, but it also doesn't erase all the like freaking scary experiences these people went through after drinking toxic water for years. Not to mention all the psychological damage that was done. Leanne Walters, you know, the whistleblower who led a citizens movement, she was given multiple awards for her role in exposing the Flint water crisis, including something called the Goldman Environmental Prize. Today, she considers herself a clean water advocate, a citizen scientist, and a kick-ass mom, according to her Twitter. You want to hear like a happy ending, but as always, this is dark history. Look, in January of this year, 2023, public officials in Flint told residents to go back to using filters on their sinks because the pipe replacements haven't been finished yet, and some of the water is still not safe to drink. It was supposed to be done.
What's been happening in Ohio? Yeah. True. I haven't seen any follow-ups.
In 2019. I mean, there could be a possibility that they gave her all those awards to distract everyone from, you know, not totally fixing the problem. I mean, they could have like sent out an email to everyone, shit. So that's a pretty clear-cut example of someone in power abusing that very power and then getting called out. It's almost like a classic David versus Goliath story, where after years of pushing and fighting, David comes out on top. But this next story isn't so black and white, because what they leaked had to do with what some would say is evidence of the United States military committing legal murder. May I introduce to you one of the most infamous whistleblowers in American history, Chelsea Manning. Chelsea was born in 1987 in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. She was always a very smart kid, just, you know, doing the best in school, getting great grades. She was definitely someone you'd want to sit next to and cheat off of. You know what I'm saying? And if that wasn't enough, Chelsea
We'll be testing all of the 5 raw water from their 5 drinking water wells, as well as the treated final water before it goes out to the village. We have our team from Ohio EPA. We also have AECOM, who are the consultants for Norfolk Southern, doing the testing. Today we're collecting water quality samples for a large number of potential contaminants, including volatile organic compounds and semi-volatile organic compounds. So there's a lot of steps that we take to ensure the integrity of these samples. First of all, we want to make sure we're sampling in the right location. At the water treatment plant, we have taps that are specially designed to collect representative samples from each of the wells. So before we collect samples, we allow the water to run for 15 minutes to ensure that there's no stagnant water from the pipes. After that, the consultant will collect some field parameters, things like pH, conductivity, dissolved oxygen. And then AECOM will collect their samples for those parameters I mentioned earlier, the VOCs, the SVOCs, all those chemicals that we're looking for. And then Ohio...
Yeah, it looks like people are still encouraged to drink bottled water. So yeah, it looks like not a lot is happening. Let's see what this is.
On March 9th, a soil sampling program was initiated to evaluate residential, agricultural, commercial, and recreational properties. The overall purpose of this program was to compare area background samples with samples in an area of interest that the smoke plume from the derailment fire may have impacted. The chemical compounds that we're looking for in this sampling program are should be in by early to mid-May. The results will be evaluated and analysis will be done. And
damn, the testing takes so long. It's a news conference. It's a hella long. More independent testing, yeah. Yeah, there's not a lot of coverage. Let's see, the past week. Oh no, it had a negative impact on the area's housing market. God forbid.
They say they've reached a significant milestone in the East Palestine remediation. They finished excavating and removing the contaminated soil beneath the South Track. Work on the North Track is set to begin next week. Norfolk Southern says it has excavated and removed more than 25,000 tons of soil, as well as 12 million gallons of water.
That's fucking crazy.
Autism except.
Dude, what? They just moved the soil away. Like, does that do anything? Where are they moving it to? I don't know. I fixed it, I guess. And I think it makes it worse when you, like, dig it up and, like, stir it around. Just putting more VOCs into the air. I pledge we won't be finished until we make this right. Cap. Yeah, it doesn't look great.
Chelsea was also very smart when it
time to buy
came to computers. She taught herself how to code and program computers and was really just one of those kids you knew had a gift with tech. Anyway, even though Chelsea shined in school, she had trouble at home. Her parents had struggled with alcoholism for as long as she's known them. Chelsea even recalled one night that shaped the rest of her life. So one evening in the Manning house, it seemed like everything was pretty normal, or as normal as it could be. According to a feature on Chelsea in the New York Times, on this night, everything changed. Chelsea's sister found their mother unconscious. Next to her was an empty bottle of Valium. And on top of that, all of the pills were swallowed. So they rushed to call 911 to get help.
No.
But the dispatcher said the nearest ambulance was 30 minutes away. So Chelsea and her sister, they realized that they need to get to the hospital fast. And their dad couldn't drive because he was drunk. So Chelsea's sister is the one having to drive the car just as best as she could. And Chelsea is in the back seat with their unconscious mother, just making sure that she's still breathing. So Chelsea at this time was only 12 years old. And when you're 12 years old, that's an experience that will make you grow up real fast, which is what happened with Chelsea. With Chelsea, she turned to an online community for support in how to handle all this. As the years go on, her life at home only gets more chaotic. So by the time she is 17 years old, Chelsea is kicked out of the house and is now completely on her own. Her dad, who was once in the Navy, suggested that Chelsea go, I don't know, maybe she should get a uniform and go serve Uncle Sam. So in 2007, she's like, you know what, fine, I will. And she enlisted in the military. And eventually, Chelsea became something called an intelligence analyst. Now, it's worth mentioning that this is just a few years after 9/11, and the U.S. was at war in the Middle East. So, there's a lot going on. As the war is heating up in 2009, Chelsea finds herself deployed to...
Dude, Chelsea Manning is a Hasanabi head. Shout out, Chelsea. Chelsea mentioned
a military base in the middle of Iraq. Now, her job every day was to go through files about what was going on during the war. And then within these documents, it's stuff where the troops were located, what big targets they were going after, and what the other side is up to. But just because she wasn't firing a gun on the front lines, it doesn't mean her days were cushy. The New York Times feature also explained that Chelsea's work setting was anything but normal. The day for her started at 9 p.m. After she climbed out of her bunk and got dressed, she would eat something as fast as possible so she could go do her job. Her quote-unquote office was essentially a large wooden box in the middle of a basketball court, on base. Inside the box, there was a simple chair and computers with 3 monitors. The way it was described was kind of like a gaming setup. You know, the gamer chair, the headphones. And while she was working, her job was to analyze mountains of data coming in from the field. So even though she wasn't on the front lines, she had a front row seat to how horrible the war was. Not only did the car bombs rattle the windows of the base, soldiers would return from the field just covered in dust and blood, just having lived through hell. And as the days went on, Chelsea was getting a very sick feeling in her stomach because a lot of the gruesome things she was seeing seemed to be buried by the military. She said, quote, "At a certain point, I stopped seeing records and started seeing people," end quote. Chelsea was talking about bloody American soldiers and Iraqi civilians laying dead in the street. She started seeing the cost of all of this war, and on TV it seemed like almost like a big budget movie. But in real life, it was like she was living in this horrific documentary. And it seemed like, to her, innocent people were getting killed every single day. When she was seeing things from Iraq and Afghanistan that she knew would never make it into the nightly news reports or into newspapers. And she felt like American people had a right to know what was actually going on. This was Chelsea's turning point when she realized like something had to change. So welcome to Chelsea Manning's revenge era. So she started to sort and organize, but also understand the files she was looking at every single day. Chelsea would work behind the scenes, like creating the maps for soldiers who were going on the attack on the front lines. She realized many of the attacks she helped put together would just create a domino effect of war violence. She felt disturbed by what the American government wanted her to do, and even worse, the fact that they were doing it in secret. So she did what many of us older millennials have done.
So incredibly brave of her to do, like, coming out with this information, and also, like, it's incredible that she maintained her humanity and her empathy, even though she was solely working with, like, data. Yeah, I like Chelsea.
In times of trouble, burned a CD. Yeah. Remember burning a CD illegally? Well, she did that illegally and secretly. She transferred all the juicy war reports onto CDs. She even labeled one of the CDs Lady Gaga. Smart! That's really fun. I like that. So Chelsea went on to leave from service in Iraq, armed with her case of fake Lady Gaga CDs. Amazing. And also, she uploaded a ton of secret documents onto her personal computer. Now, what happened next was risky as hell and violated every oath she took when she joined the military. So Chelsea has all this information, and she knows that she has to work with someone to get the info out to the people. So she hit up some big name newspapers like the New York Times and the Washington Post. But for some reason, each one of them were passing. They were like, no, we're good. And it must have been extremely frustrating for Chelsea because she was like the direct source. She had some serious receipts, but the claims that she was making was nothing like anyone had ever seen before. So no one seemed to believe her. She decided to turn to a news source that can only be described as controversial. Honestly, not the best look. I mean, it was making her look a little bit questionable too, but Chelsea wanted to get the truth out there. So she sent over the documents to WikiLeaks. Before all this, WikiLeaks was a quiet website.
Dude, imagine being the reporters who turned down that story now, being like, fuck. Oh, god damn it. Shit. I really should have broke that story.
Site that wanted to air the world's dirty laundry. But once Chelsea gave them all their data, WikiLeaks became a household name overnight, and its founder, Julian Assange, became a global celebrity. I mean, loved by many, but hated by even more. So this was definitely the perfect platform for Chelsea because they would just broadcast all of her receipts. And they sure did, okay? They broadcasted all of the documents, and it set the world on fire. Now, I know you're dying to know, like, what did Chelsea have to say? What did she leak? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was a truckload of damning information against the American military. I mean, she leaked documents about...
It was a lot, right? I don't think I actually, like, read them or just read about them.
The US not investigating hundreds of reports of abuse, torture, and rape by the Iraqi police. And then there were secret missions about hunting down terrorists that the Pentagon wanted to fly under the radar. So all of it already pretty bad.
Typical.
But the leak that really sealed the deal had to do with something called collateral murder. What? That sounds juicy. On February 3rd, 2010, WikiLeaks published Chelsea's receipts. And one specific video left viewers completely shook. The video was uploaded under the title Collateral Murder, and it showed secret footage filmed from an American military helicopter.
Damn.
At first, it looks like a normal mission, but then it takes a dark turn. The soldiers on the helicopter, they start by asking for permission to shoot at some targets. Not just any targets, it was like human targets. And the helicopter gun begins spraying bullets towards the ground, killing everyone they can. During all of this, the pilots of the helicopter are heard laughing and treating this as like a fun game. But when the bullets stopped flying, about a dozen people were dead. Among the dead, there were several civilians and 2 journalists. And unfortunately, that was just the tip of the iceberg. Chelsea shared over 750,000 documents to WikiLeaks. And it wasn't just about American troops and drones. It also had a bunch of confidential information about...
Kind of sounds like America is the terroristic occupying force there, huh? Interesting. Interesting.
Secret alliances between countries, secret wars happening, and the names of many spies all around the world. And not everyone's name was protected. I mean, some people's full names did get published, putting their jobs and their lives in the line of danger. Now, some people came out clapping for Chelsea, being so transparent, like, wow.
Yeah.
On the other hand, she was now not just a threat to the US Army, but a threat to national security. She was target number 1 around the world because she didn't just leak secrets about the United States. She leaked stuff about things happening all around the world. And people wanted to silence this bitch forever, okay? In the wake of all this, people were like, what the hell is going on with the government? And what is really going on with the war? The documents, and especially the video, made people really doubt authority and caused some chaos. On top of that, the soldiers featured in the drone video were being accused of trying to cover up shady stuff that they had done. Chelsea shared a lot of international documents that showed upper-level corruption in other countries' governments. Her leaks indirectly led to a bunch of uprisings against dictatorships called the Arab Spring, which led to the death of tens of thousands of people. Pretty soon after the leak, someone ratted on Chelsea to the army. She was arrested and charged with over 24 charges. But the worst charge of all, aiding the enemy. She spent several years in prison under rough conditions. I mean, they weren't going to be nice to her after everything she exposed about them. She also spent almost a year in solitary confinement, where she was regularly stripped naked and forced into sleep deprivation. For what, you know? Even some of the higher-up officials in the government called her treatment in prison cruel, inhumane, and degrading. But nobody did anything about it. On top of that, Chelsea's personal life was being ripped to shreds by the media, as if her personal life had anything to do with her time in the military. Almost like they were trying to create one big distraction from what everything Chelsea exposed.
Like
I mean, if you think about it, I mean, if your personal life is aired nationally, this is probably, you know, a distraction because you might be onto something. Eventually, Chelsea was not charged with more serious convictions like aiding the enemy, but she did plead guilty to a few of the lesser charges, like leaking secret information. After spending years in prison, she was pardoned, and now she could live life as a free woman. Today, she spends her time as a political activist, a security consultant in the tech industry, and she even put out a memoir. Good for you, girl. Life after whistleblowing has been challenging for Chelsea. I mean, being a whistleblower now seems totally different than it did in the beginning. She did not get any reward money. She spent 7 long-ass years in prison. And even though a lot of people treated her like a hero, A lot of people really hated her. I mean, still today really hate her. But because of her actions, more whistleblower protections were put into place. Now, if you want to leak documents, many newspapers, like the New York Times, have these things called secure drop. So you can anonymously, do so. Ever since Chelsea dropped all those documents, there has never been a leak that big. But Chelsea changed the way people exposed bombshell reports about the government forever. And I think even inspired a few others to blow the whistle themselves. Now, this next story is controversial, but I don't know, kind of interesting to discuss. And if you've seen that documentary, Enemies of the State, like I did, which actually inspired me to do the story because I was like, what? You'll know why. So this story isn't as clear-cut as the other ones we've mentioned. Leanne, for example, was an everyday citizen who saw something and said something. She reported to her representatives, she followed a direct chain of command, and there was a tangible upside to her work, having clean water. Chelsea's story was a little bit more complicated because she stole government property, but she was keeping those receipts, and she reported what she found to the news. But for this next story, this can only be described as the dark side of whistleblowing. I mean, I was all in when I heard this story, but then as you get deeper, you realize that not all whistleblowers are blowing the same whistle. This next story is all about how whistleblowing can go very wrong. Now, along with that documentary I mentioned, reports from Newsweek and Mother Jones were very helpful in piecing together Matt DeHart's shocking story. So this Matt guy, he was born in 1984 in Maryland, and Matt came from like a very conservative Christian family, and his family was very involved in the military. I mean, his grandparents and even his own parents had all been in the military. Matt did not do very well in school. I mean, he didn't really fit in. He didn't get the best grades. And he even made comments once about bombing his middle school, and then he had to go to court for that. Matt's parents took him to the doctor, where he would then be diagnosed with depression and ADHD. During
Hi, Dark Blue, welcome in.
his senior year, Matt got in trouble once again, so his parents decided to move him to homeschooling. The family then moved states, and even after Matt graduated, he couldn't keep a job and would eventually drop out of college. It was said during this time that he struggled big time with depression. So these years, he's just sitting alone at his computer, and that's where Matt became more and more involved in the online community, a community called hacktivists. Now, hacktivists are computer hackers who call themselves activists.
Let's go.
And they leak, like Chelsea, they leak documents for the sake of doing what they consider to be the right thing. Matt spent his early 20s at home, just really getting into the whole hacker scene. But he decided enough was enough, and in 2008, he followed in his daddy's footsteps to join the military, more specifically, the U.S. Air National Guard. Once Matt was stationed in Indiana, he became an intelligence analyst. He said one of his jobs was to study video footage of different drone strikes, and he was in charge of detailing the damage and counting the dead bodies. It seemed like every day there were more and more civilians being killed, and Matt was feeling guilty about his part in the war. So Matt wanted to share the horrors of what was happening. He knew that he had to be careful and cover his tracks because, everything he was sharing was super classified. He first started on 4chan, which some of you may have heard.
The recent leaker was in the National Guard too. True. In the Air National Guard, nonetheless. Yeah. Interesting. You might be onto something.
Of, but this is an online community of people that always seem, let's say, very upset. Very upset. Lots of angry people were on there. But Matt started to build a community on 4chan and decided they needed somewhere more private to talk. So he creates a secret server on the dark web. Ooh, spooky! And Matt encourages everyone on the server to use it as a dumping ground for any interesting information, especially if it's about the government trying to cover something up. Around this time, Matt is actually discharged from the army because of his depression, which is interesting timing, but we don't know exactly whether this was because Matt reported his depression or if they had to submit him to have an exam. But what we do know is that he was honorably discharged, which probably wouldn't have been the case if his bosses knew about his secret online burn book. But when all this happens, I mean, he's pretty bummed. He comes home. I mean, he's feeling like a total disappointment. Matt ends up moving back in with his parents. And according to a report, he gets even deeper into his secret server rabbit hole. And this is where he starts to get into some pretty wild claims. Do you guys remember after 9/11, there was that white powder stuff going around? Someone apparently was sending it to senators and people in power.
Wait, what powder stuff? Wait.
Your grandpa, I don't know. There was a big anthrax scare. And we talked about it in our Postal Service episode, but anthrax is essentially a powder poison. And these anonymous letters that were filled with anthrax scared.
Yeah, I always remember seeing the posters in the post office. I was always so scared.
The hell out of America. They thought the terrorists were at it once again. But according to Matt, he sees that someone dropped some very interesting information on his server. Matt said he saw info that linked the CIA to anthrax, which was at this point responsible for killing 5 people in 2001. And Matt is like, oh shit. And he's connecting the dots. It's like, this actually kind of makes sense. So he digs deeper in hopes to understand better as to like what this is all about. Then one day, boom, his front door is kicked in. That's when Matt realizes that he's the center of an FBI investigation. So a whole bunch of FBI agents come storming into the house and raid the DeHart home. Matt sees his prized possession, his computer with all of those secrets in it, just snatched right up by the FBI and taken as evidence. For obvious reasons, Matt's like, oh shit. In addition to whatever government secrets Matt did or did not have on his computer, what he did have was child pornography. Yeah. So it turns out that Matt had been soliciting dick pictures and naughty videos from teenagers before he even went to the army.
Come on, man.
So yeah, you can call that a bit of a major detail. And now this is the part of the story where things get real cuckoo real fast. Matt was awaiting trial in jail on his child pornography possession charges. He was actually in there for about 21 months. And Matt says while he was in there, he was drugged, tortured, and questioned by the FBI. And when I heard this, I was like, I don't know of any stories where the FBI drugged and tortured someone accused of...
Yeah, surely the FBI would never do that. Surely that's never happened before.
Just like child pornography. I mean, yes, horrible crime, but seems kind of extreme, even for them. Almost as if Matt had something that made the government look bad. But what do I know? I don't know. It's just reading theories and stuff. Eventually, Matt does get out on bail, and the second he tastes freedom, I mean, he's like, I gotta get the hell out of America. So Matt was convinced that the FBI was the one who planted the child pornography on his hard drive because they wanted to distract from the anthrax information he had. Now, nobody knows who came up with this plan exactly, but Matt and his parents decided to pack into the family car, hit the road, and head for Canada. Now, they actually made it over the border and into the country. And while in Canada, Matt went to the immigration authorities and requested asylum. He kept saying that he was drugged and tortured by the Americans because of the information he had, and he was really looking for protection. But the Canadians either weren't buying it or they just did not want to get involved. Either way, they ended up tossing Matt in jail, and he was then handed over to the FBI and taken back to the States. Matt ended up pleading guilty and serving time for receiving child pornography, and then he pled guilty for not showing up to court when he was supposed to. He never faced any charges for espionage or smuggling secret government documents because he was never able to produce any of the stuff he said he had. I mean, nothing on anthrax, nothing on anything really. It was reported that they never found any record of it. Now, a lot of people were like, well, two things can indeed be happening at the same time. I mean, yes, child porn, horrible, disgusting, awful, right? No, bad. He should be punished for that if it was definitely on his computer. But the secrets Matt shared on his computer could also have been on there, like the documents about the CIA, being responsible for anthrax, could have been on his computer as well. And maybe the FBI did erase all of it. I mean, two things could be true at the same time.
True.
But needless to say, the child porn of it all really threw a wrench in any credibility Matt or his server had, which is kind of a shame because his receipts, if they did exist, never saw the light of day. Technically, Matt really isn't a whistleblower because he never actually blew the whistle on that anthrax theory or any other secrets that were posted on that secret server. And even if he had, there was no evidence because mysteriously, that anthrax leak had vanished from the server before Matt could bring it to the FBI. So if there's no whistle, I don't know, many people think that the FBI just deleted it all too. So I don't know. Matt maintains that the whole reason he was charged with child porn was because the FBI knew how much incriminating information he had on them.
I do wonder if they like planted the evidence of the CP on him because it's a little sussy.
And they were like trying to silence him. Or some people were like, shut up, Matt, you had child porn on your computer, you know? Anyway, Matt DeHart's legacy is a little tainted, to say the least. Now here's something interesting, though. Just 1 year after DeHart's arrest, the U.S. Department of Justice came out with a public report of their anthrax investigation. And they had uncovered some interesting stuff. The most scandalous part, the only people who had access to anthrax during the time of the attacks were the people who worked in a government lab. One of the people who worked there who was raising some red flags was researcher Dr. Bruce Ivins. So he had been working on a cure for anthrax for years before the attacks, with little success. And since there was almost no funding being given to his lab, he had no success. Before the anthrax attacks, the work being done in Bruce's lab was seen as pointless. But of course, as soon as the anthrax attacks began, all of that changed. The Department of Justice had a ton of circumstantial evidence against Dr. Bruce. First of all, he was one of the only people with access to anthrax. Medical professionals labeled him homicidal, and he was the only one, really, who stood to benefit from an anthrax scare. So all the signs were pointing to this guy who made it. The lab got more funding and the work Dr. Bruce was doing was finally taking off. And in the released report, it said Dr. Bruce had some major psychological issues. He was obsessive. Like he would stalk sorority girls. He had paranoid personality disorder. And even his psychiatrist came out and labeled him homicidal and sociopathic. I feel like if your psychiatrist is saying that about you, I mean, you know... says a lot. An investigation about where the anthrax came from came back with the answer, Dr. Bruce's lab. He was their #1 suspect, which made it seem like Matt DeHart's sources were ultimately correct. But before...
An amazing book idea. Deconstruction of the cable system. Torn apart. All secrets revealed to the public. Honestly, that would be a fucking dope idea. I would read the hell out of that. And it could go on forever, probably. Even with stuff that's already been declassified.
Bruce could be arrested and publicly stand trial.
I gotta get some more coffee. I'll be back in a second.
He killed himself. I hate when they do that. Maybe it was because of Bruce's mental illness. Maybe it was because of the storm he knew was coming his way. But in the end, sadly, Dr. Bruce ended up killing himself. Not to be rude, but a trial was coming up, and he knew there was no way out for him anymore. So, maybe he decided to end things on his own terms. I don't know. But it sucks because when they do that, they leave the victims with no closure. And that is, I think, just so, ugh. There was so much circumstantial evidence that was pointing to Dr. Bruce. But like I said, Matt never officially blew the whistle on him, but he definitely blew some kind of whistle. It does seem a little extreme for the FBI to kick down your door and take your laptop if you aren't some kind of serious threat. I don't know. So where does everything stand today? We learned in our advertising episode that we're all being tracked. So I think it's only fair if we track people and power back, right? And the Lincoln Law was created to empower everyday citizens. But it's very clear that whistleblowing isn't like it was in the 1800s. On one hand, you can have Chelsea Manning, whose life was destroyed for a very long time, still kind of is, depending on who you ask. On the other hand, you have Leanne, who was giving these awards. So I guess it all depends on whose whistle you're blowing. Now, a lot of people are like, whistleblowing, bad. So is it the right thing to do? Whistleblowing holds people in power accountable, but some secrets are secrets for a reason. And if they get out, there are consequences. Sometimes it gets many people thinking, well, was leaking all of that classified information even worth it? I mean, who's to say? But here's what I do know. When Barbara told her boss that her husband was cheating on her, she held it against her. And now they don't talk. So is being right and telling the truth worth the job for her, friendship, whatever, you know? Your guess is as good as mine. Well, everyone, thank you for learning with me today. Remember, don't be afraid to ask questions to get the whole story because we deserve that. Now, I'd love to hear your guys' reactions to today's story, so make sure to use the hashtag #DarkHistory over on social media so I can follow along. And don't forget to join me over on my YouTube where you can watch these episodes on Thursday.
We did it. That was a good one. That's a good one. I hate her little centrist, like, is it good or is it bad? I don't give a fuck. Yeah, it's good. I don't think it really compromised anything, if we're being real. Like, most of the shit, like, they already knew that civilians were getting killed by American soldiers. Like, they already knew. Like, uh...
Hello, hi friends. I hope you're having a wonderful day today. My name is Bailey Sarian, and I'd like to welcome you to my study and to my podcast, Dark History. Hi. Now, this is a chance to tell a story like it is, and honestly, just to share the history of stuff we would never think about. So all you have to do is sit back, relax, and let's talk about that hot, juicy history goss. Today's story is wild. Ugh. Today we have Miss Joan in costume. She is dressed as a walrus, which is actually really fucked up, Joan, because in today's story we do talk about a walrus and it's tragic. So I don't know why you went with that, girl. Questionable. Who's your costume designer? You should be fired. But okay, girl, do your thing. Okay, you guys know I love my games.
Oh my god.
And one of my favorites was a little game called Zoo Tycoon. Ugh. I freaking loved it, okay? If you don't know, it was like Roller Coaster Tycoon.
Yeah, I remember Roller Coaster Tycoon. I played that a whole lot. I love that shit.
Where you could build a whole ass theme park, but it was less dangerous. So many people at my fake theme park ended up getting decapitated or like flying off the end of a roller coaster, which I set up on purpose because I wanted destruction. Anyway, Zoo Tycoon was a little safer. Well, at least for the people. But with this game, you got to build your own zoo. It was so fun, I loved it. I was obsessed with creating those bougie-ass little habitats for my giraffes and elephants. And there was a trick to the game. You make more money when your animals and your visitors were happy. I mean, it was a lot of pressure, I won't lie. But it got me thinking, is that true about zoos in real life? So I started taking a stroll down memory lane, you know, when I would go to the zoo as a kid. And I was having some, let's say, like troubling memories. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever been to the zoo and noticed, I don't know, an animal just like pacing back and forth over and over again? Or maybe you've gone over to the hippos exhibit. And the hippos are just swimming in the same weird pattern. Maybe it's just me, but I thought it was because the tigers wanted to be like closer to the people, like come out and greet their fans. Or maybe they were just hungry and honestly waiting for feeding time. But nay. It turns out, according to the Born Free Foundation, which is a wildlife conservation organization, when animals display weird, repetitive behavior like pacing, it's a type of psychological trauma called zoochosis. I know, plot twist. Who knew? Aww. Now, zoochosis?
Oh, that's so sad. Zoochosis. I didn't know there was a whole condition.
Is defined as a mental illness that develops when an animal is living in captivity and they don't really have a situation like they would in the natural environment. It can cause them stress and, quote, there can be deterioration in the animal's physical and mental health. This may manifest in the development of physical disease or abnormal behavior, end quote. In other words, they start to lose it. I mean, how are we supposed to know if the animal is happy or not, you know? Maybe they just don't even know any better. And after that, I got to Googling. And girl, let me tell you, that's when I found out about Gus. Gus was a polar bear who lived in Central Park Zoo in the 1990s. At first, Gus was really popular because of how active he was. And like Gus was always on the move, he was underwater, swimming around all day, hardly taking any breaks. And people thought like he was happy to be in his little pool enclosure, just living his best polar bear life. But then, people started to notice something weird. You know, it sucks when you go to an exhibit and the animal has its back turned towards you and you're like, oh, sorry for bothering you, I'll go now. People started to notice Gus was swimming a lot, like constantly swimming in a figure 8 shape. Now he would swim like that for like 12 hours a day, just over and over and over again. And when he would stop for break, he would turn his attention to people pressing up against the glass, just watching him. And I guess he would start to follow them as they paced back and forth near the underwater glass enclosure, almost like he was stalking them. It was kind of creepy, especially the little kids who were all excited to visit Gus. He was now stalking them. Now, I read that polar bears are natural predators and actually are super aggressive in the wild. Polar bears are so powerful, they can decapitate a human head with one swing.
Yeah, it's a bear. It's a bear.
Swing of their paw. Oh, dear. And their bite is more powerful than a great white shark's. So, yeah, it's literally in their DNA. And Gus was trapped in that tiny enclosure with nothing to hunt or stalk or to do, you know? His meals were prepared for him, just like all the other animals. So he had to get those instincts out somehow, right? Apparently, his aggressive stalking of the kids was so scary, they had to put up an extra barrier between the glass and the zoo visitors. Now, doctors came in and evaluated Gus and determined he was struggling with zoochosis. And he was going through some mental trauma. The media even gave him the nickname the bipolar bear.
No.
It's not funny, but you know, it's kind of funny. After getting behavior.
The bipolar bear. What the fuck? Jesus Christ. I love a pun. I do.
Behavioral therapy. Anyway, it wasn't enough. Gus needed something more to help him get better. And that's how Gus became the first zoo animal to be prescribed Prozac. Oh yeah, baby. An antidepressant. Poor little Gus. Look, they just wanted him to feel better, and they were trying everything. The Central Park Zoo also did a couple other things to try to make his life better. For example, they got him a little jacuzzi. What kind of bear doesn't want a jacuzzi? There was literally this headline from the BBC that read, "Depressed polar bear cheers up with jacuzzi." And I kind of loved it. Now, as time went by, the zookeepers were trying to keep Gus's spirit lifted. So on top of that hot jacuzzi, they gave him new things to do, you know, to keep him occupied. Like food puzzles and giving him snacks that were a little bit more challenging to eat. Kind of like those Kongs for dogs. You know what I'm talking about. Challenging.
Oh my God.
But
I'll be back in a second.
At the end of the day, I mean, Gus wasn't a 25-pound dog. He was a 700-pound predator. And he probably had a lot less space than a lot of dogs out there. Most polar bear enclosures have 1 million times less space than they would in the wild. It would be like if we had to live our entire lives in a bathroom. But we'd never have any privacy because there would be a giant window where the door should be and people would be watching us all day long, you know? Kind of hot, depending on who you are. Gus's keepers were running out of ideas to make Gus happy. I mean, if only they set him free, huh? But what they hadn't tried was giving Gus a potential lover. So the zoo surprised Gus with his very own polar bear girlfriend. Oh, yeah, baby. Her name was Lily. Now, Lily and Gus shared a beautiful romance. People used to visit the zoo just to see their exhibit and see them lounging around together, being all cute, just having a good old time, you know? It was adorable. But sadly, in 2004, Lily passed away. Gus obviously was left heartbroken. He just sat around in a daze and seemed confused, and he was described as being, quote, very disturbed by her absence. Now, the zoo eventually got Gus a new girlfriend in 2004. Now, this new girlfriend, her name was Ida. And Gus bounced back to his old happy self, just full of life. But this bear has some bad luck because once again, tragedy struck, and Ida died in 2011 at the age of 25 of liver disease. I guess she was drinking too much beer. After that, Gus sunk right back into the deep depression of his. This time, he even stopped eating. Poor guy. In 2013, veterinarians found out that he had an inoperable thyroid tumor, and poor Gus had to be euthanized. It's so sad. It's like Jack and Rose with that door. You know, Gus just couldn't let Ida go. And it really just goes to show that whether you're a polar bear or human, love always prevails. But here's the thing, Gus was one of millions of zoo animals out there, right? And it really makes you wonder, like, how many more Gus's are out there? And that also made me wonder, when and why the hell did we start zoos in the first place? And friends, buckle up, because this story was not what I expected. The first version of a zoo in the world was from, no surprise here, ancient Egypt, in a place called the City of Falcon. Now, this city was the it place in the prehistoric days of Egypt, okay? Many people came to the City of Falcon because it was known for having this very important temple dedicated to worshiping several Egyptian gods, like Horus, the king of the gods. The City of Falcon was also the place where all the Egyptian royalty lived. So you know it was nice because they got money and they're not gonna live not in luxury, you know? So, I mean, you get it. It was just a very important area of Egypt for a very long time. And it makes sense that the first zoo would be there. Now, archaeologists, they didn't even find this zoo until 2009. Archaeologists were out there digging around, doing their thing, and they found bones from the year 4000 BCE, before the invention of writing and before the Great Pyramids. The bones were from animals like baboons, leopards, crocodiles, hippos, gazelles, dogs. I mean, the list goes on. But what they didn't find were traces of the zoo like we know them today. You see, back then, these animals were a big deal to the City of Falcon. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't great for the animals because sometimes they were sacrificed as offerings to the Egyptian gods, but some were luckier and given as gifts to one another. Royals at the time used to walk around with these animals just to like show off power to the other royals.
Just casually walking around with a tiger? Sounds kind of dope, though.
Living in the area. They're like, hey, look at me. I have a leopard. What do you have? Most of the time, these pet animals were not stuck in cages. They were actually given a bunch of space in like one giant enclosure where they would all just hang out together. But again, it wasn't free-range bliss or anything. During this time, researchers found evidence that pet animals were maybe beaten into submission, and that evidence came in the form of animal bones. Some hippos had broken legs, monkeys had broken hands.
Hippos had broken legs? How the fuck? What the fuck?
And there were even antelope bones that had markings on them.
Oh god, I can't hear it.
Consistent with being tied up. It's crazy what bones can tell you, really. I didn't know that it would show that, but it did. Even though these kings may not have treated the animals so well, there is indeed evidence that they loved them, because sometimes when researchers found animal bones buried in Egypt, they were all together, like in a big circle. And in the center of that circle would be human bones. I kind of thought of it of like, you know, someone who loves their animal and then they get buried with their animal. It's like that, you know? Is it weird? I don't know. I'm not here to judge. Do what you want. Be buried with your cockatoo. Some historians believe this was done because when powerful men died, oftentimes their families, especially like their wives and children, were killed and buried with them so they'd all transition to the afterlife together. So the belief is that there was also a type of family bond between the human and the animal they were buried with. And all of the bones, human and animal, were all carefully covered. Remember from our mummy episode how sacred the wrapping of dead bodies was to them? I mean, the same thing was happening here. So what I'm getting at really is that these exotic, powerful animals were the hottest items for kings back in the day. Again, it was like a flex, a sign of power. But zoos continued to be a private, rich person only thing all the way through the Middle Ages. So yeah, I mean, for centuries, if a person had any sort of money, power, or influence, their favorite ways to flex was by owning a bunch of animals, especially the animals that people had never seen. The brighter, the stranger, the better. So in the beginning, zoos were intended to simply send a message. It was meant to symbolize the chaos of nature being brought under human control. Kind of like a signal to everyone saying, if I can tame this big-ass hippo, imagine what I can do to you, sweetie. Just like the Egyptians.
Ew. Ew, I hate that. Oh my god. Yeah, I captured this chimpanzee. I'm gonna capture you next. Ayo.
Royals in the Middle Ages had their own private zoos because they wanted to look powerful, you know? And they also casually gave exotic animals as gifts to one another. People knew gifting these exotic animals would get you the gift giver major points because royals love to add to their menageries, which is French for zoo. Fun, huh? King Henry III was gifted 3 leopards when he got married in 1235. What a year, huh? Other important rulers were gifted bears and even elephants. I mean, I guess that's better than a blender or a mixer, you know? Maybe more work, but more fun.
Yeah, I mean, Pablo Escobar, I don't know if he got them as gifts, but he had, like, his own little zoo.
Someone gifted me a bear. I would never need a partner because I just want to snuggle, and I would snuggle that bear all day. Wait, that sounds weird because it sounds sexual, huh? If it did, sorry. I just want a bear so I could snuggle, and then hopefully the bear eats me, and it's kind of like this perfect circle. The circle of life, you know? Thank you. Keeping these animals alive was expensive, as I'm sure you can imagine, and not practical. But, as you know, anything the royals did was just that. It wouldn't be until about 10 years later that zoos opened to the public. But there was one zoo that really got people talking. And we have the French Revolution to thank for it. So, the revolution started in 1789 because people were sick and tired of all the extravagant stuff the royals were spending money on. Meanwhile, their people were on the streets starving to death, you know? They had enough. A perfect example of that was King Louis XVI's private menagerie. So King Louis's palace, which was called Versailles, had acres of land surrounding it. And this place, I'm telling you, is next level. I mean, it had more than 2,000 rooms. Why? I don't know. Each of them, though, decked out, bougie.
Why not, I guess, you know? Why not?
As hell. And then there were tons of gardens just surrounding it. I mean, beautiful. So anyone who was anyone would kill to be invited over to this guy's palace, especially to get a look at the insane menagerie of animals that King Louis had collected over the years. He took a lot of pride in his collection and would invite guests to come take a look at the palace, but also see the exotic animals. The people of France pointed out that the king cared more about feeding his pets instead of the people, you know? Fair. I mean, kids were literally dying on the streets of starvation. Meanwhile, King Louis over here was like, but did you notice the storks on your way in? Aren't they gorgeous? Just ignore those dead kids over there. LOL. Finally, King Louis takes the hint and he's like, fine. Bro. I'll move these animals and like make it public for everyone to see. And he did just that. And he also started a new trend because once his animals were on display for the public, lots of other countries took notice and started doing the same thing. Now, zoos became the symbol of a nation's power. And once again, it was really just a way to show off. Now, when the animals showed up and were put into the Jardin des Plantes in Paris, it was a huge success. And it wasn't just the French who were visiting. It attracted people from all over the world who were willing to pay just to catch a glimpse of these majestic animals. Zoos started to become a place you wanted to visit, you know? Somewhere to take the family, something to do on the weekend or on a day off. But most of all, it gave people an opportunity to see animals that they would never have seen otherwise. I mean, this was their Google, okay? People loved it. And that created what we call demand in the marketplace. All that demand inspired one schlick businessman in Germany to get into the zoo game. But not just that, he revolutionized everything we know about zoos. Now, some may call him iconic, others say he was evil, but either way, his legacy, it's pretty controversial, okay? This part of our story starts in easily one of the cutest towns I've ever researched for this show, okay? Welcome to Hamburg, a town in northern Germany. Now this place will make your jaw hit the damn floor, okay? The churches are moody and Romanesque, the buildings are sleek, and parts of it are giving Venice, you know? Because there's all these cute boats and buildings on a river that run—
Ooh, it's so pretty! Oh, that's so pretty.
Runs through the center of town. A little fun fact, we, or at least I am grateful for this city because this is where a little thing called the hamburger was invented. Hamburg? Hamburger? Yeah. Thanks, Hamburg.
True.
So, the date is June 10th, 1844, when a baby boy is born. His name is Carl Hagenbeck, which reminds me of Carl's Jr. You know, hamburgers. I still got hamburgers on my mind. So right off the bat, young Carl had his eye on the prize. And that prize? Money.
Man, hamburger sounds good. Hey, what's up, Gamer J? I agree. It's too profitable. Yeah. That's, I think that's why we need a revolution. Low key. There are ways.
Money. He wanted a lot of it. And he knew from a young age, in order to get—
Wait, what did Ethan Klein do now? Is he getting canceled yet again? Jesus Christ.
there, he had to hustle hard. Carl's father was a good role model for that because Dad was a fishmonger, which is someone who sells fish. But Papa Hagenbeck had a little side hustle buying, showing, and selling animals that, you know, somehow fell into his lap. He's like, I don't know how I got it, I just got it. Because of that, Papa Hagenbeck had a whole collection of aquatic animals that he just held on to. So one day, when Carl was 14 years old, his dad was working near a local river, mongering a bunch of fish, which kind of sounds scary, but he's selling them. And that's when a bunch of weathered fishermen approach in their own boat. They tie up on the docks, they go up to Papa Hagenbeck, and they're like, hey, we have something you might be interested in. Wink, wink. Like drugs? What? No. You see, while the fishermen were out on the ocean fishing for stuff that they could sell, they ended up catching a bunch of seals. I take great pride in my seal noise, but now that I think of it, it might be a walrus that I'm doing. Either way, seals. Now,
I don't know.
This whole situation is a little, it's a little suspicious, you know? No one accidentally catches seals. Like, oopsie, got a bunch of like slippery seals. But here we are, you know? Anyway, so these fishermen approach Papa Hagenbeck and they're like, Hagen, baby, listen, shh. Hush those lips. You're gonna love this. And they revealed a group of seals that they had found. Accidentally somehow. Now, they had to do this because Papa Hagenbeck actually had a deal with these fishermen where they had to give him everything they caught. And maybe it was Carl's birthday or something because Papa Hagenbeck went up to his son and was like, hey, happy birthday. Here's a seal. Yeah, I know. It's an odd gift for a 14-year-old, but good for him. When I was 14 years old, I got nothing for my birthday because no one gave a shit. But okay, have fun with your seal, Carl.
Sad. That's so sad.
But I gotta tell you, when Carl saw those little seals, his eyes lit up. One, because, hello, they're the cutest animals on the planet, so I get that. And two, young Carl saw dollar signs. Oh yeah. Most likely, Carl was thinking to himself, hey, if I love looking at these things, I bet other people would too. And this sparked an idea in Carl and his dad's mind. They're starting to realize that most people don't get to see these animals out in the sea, so maybe they might be willing to pay a pretty penny for a chance to see them up close, you know? So Papa Hagenbeck builds 2 large wooden vats, like giant buckets, to put the seals in. The Hagenbecks then set them up in like a local market area, which is about 4 blocks from the river, and they officially opened this public attraction for business. People immediately lined up to see these majestic creatures, and each person paid Carl about 8 cents in German money at the time. So they were getting some coin. In Carl's own words, he said, quote, "It's fair to say that the whole pet business grew out of this." And ta-da! Their plan worked. So Carl is making a lot of money because of these seals. So he turns all of this into a huge business. I love seals. They're so precious. Oh my God. Seals are like little angels on this earth. They just look at you with those big eyes.
They're so cute.
I would give a guy a blowy around the corner just to get that 8 cents to see those seals. Facts. Armed with a bunch of boats, business connections, and employees, Carl organized trips from Germany into Africa. The whole point of this was to find exotic animals, trap them, and then bring them back to Carl so he could, show them off for a profit. And Carl was honestly able to do this pretty easily because at this time, the country of Germany was pretty heavy into colonization. So during the 1880s, Germany was just straight up stealing land in West and East Africa. So they could just go right in, take what they need, and come right back. Now, I'm not going to say all of this made Carl's animal theft easier, but it did allow him to keep his hands clean, He would have the men do all the dirty work. They would come back. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need to know. So this meant that Carl could stop using the local animal dealers, who I guess were just costing him a lot more money. And instead, he could bring on his own employees and send them out to do all the work, like animal snatching. He was essentially like the Charles Manson of animals. Everyone else did it for him. But research shows that these hunters were, at times, killing the animals, honestly, just for like shits and giggles. Animals, they would end up being separated from their babies, and hundreds of them would die on their trip back to Germany because the conditions on the ship were so bad, they didn't even have like any ventilation, and everyone was crammed in there like an evil Noah's Ark.
Jesus.
Or maybe I should call it the Black Pearl. Carl's company started to get a serious reputation as the go-to place for any kind of animal you needed or just wanted. And it wasn't long before he became the biggest animal dealer in Europe. How big, you ask? Well, he put together a little tally of the animals he captured during his first 20 years of business, and boy, is it shocking. Now, Carl sold at least 1,000 lions, around 400 tigers, 700 leopards, thousands of different types of bears, something like 800 hyenas,
dude, that's
and
crazy.
300 African elephants. 300!
How the fuck did he feed all of them? Did he just capture extra animals to feed the other animals? Like, what about the herbivores? Like, what the fuck is what?
I'm more shocked at the 300 African elephants because that's a lot of space. I mean, African elephants are almost 11 tons each. How did he get 300? That's a lot. I got questions. He also sold at least 17 rhinos, 150 giraffes, and then like 600 antelopes. Jeez. Carl tried to publicly portray himself as a man who only did all this because he deeply loved animals. I love animals, you guys. I just love them. In the press, there were photos of Carl surrounded by like walruses who would come up and snuggle him. Yeah. So there's pictures of like Carl with walruses and they were all like being all cute next to him. I mean, when you see that alone, you're like, oh my God, he does love animals. Okay, but look, plot twist, we're gonna take a sharp left here because the real reason why the walruses were snuggling up to him, it's so dark. You're gonna cry. I cried. So in Carl's own memoir, he explained how he actually captured these cute, defenseless walruses. He said, quote, "In order to catch the young, it is usually necessary to kill the mother." He would then go on to explain that one of his boats would go out into the ocean, find a family of walruses, and then just like murder the mom in cold blood. I know.
Jesus.
So then everybody would just wait, okay? Go totally silent. Then the guys on the ship or the boat, whatever, they would pull the mother's body real close to them. And then they would just wait. After some time goes by, eventually, a baby walrus would swim up and climb onto its mother's back. And then the baby walrus would be like, "Mama, can you hear me?" She couldn't, because her ass was dead, you know? Ugh, dark. Anyway, at that point, Carl said, quote, "It was not difficult to overcome the unassisted young animal." Oh, what a big, strong man you are, Carl. What I'm getting at is that all of Carl's walruses were orphans, and most likely, these baby walruses...
That's so fucked up. That's so fucked up. How could you fucking... Jesus.
...saw Carl as like some version of a parent. So now when you look at that photo of Carl with the walruses around him, it's like, yeah, no shit they're gonna be snuggling up next to you. They think that you're his mom, right? Asshole, boo, canceled. Well, Carl didn't mind though, because business was booming. I mean, it was so good that he was able to realize his lifelong dream. And in 1907, he opened up what would become an iconic zoo just outside of his hometown of Hamburg. Now, this zoo was called Tierpark Hagenbeck. And this was a revolutionary place because Carl completely changed the way zoos looked. Now, before this, animals at the zoo were stuck behind bars and were housed inside like these really stinky, awful buildings. And the whole thing is just so depressing. So Carl was like, screw that. I've got something else. And he went all extreme home makeover on that shit. Ugh, everyone loves a makeover. So Carl, he's like, let's get rid of the bars. Let's knock down all these walls. Let's get rid of a roof, okay? And when you entered Tierpark, he wanted you to feel like you were walking into an animal's natural habitat, almost so it looked like the animals had always lived there. Like, oh my God, you had entered into their home. And honestly, he did just that, and it was pretty legit looking. The animal enclosures at Tierpark were more panoramic than scenic, and they were huge. I'm talking like 50 acres. And it was the perfect place for Carl to show off his impressive collection of animals. So when he walked in, there would be like small ponds over here, and then over there is like a riverbank with some cute little deer getting some water from it. Beyond that, there were zebras and ostriches running around, and overlooking all of it were lions and tigers just hanging out by those natural-looking rock formations he put in. Honestly, it was a beautiful sight to see. Snap. The park was designed to convince visitors that the animals were living in a happy, healthy environment. You know, very similar to their natural habitats that they were stolen from, or something. The design of this park had nothing to do with like making the lives of these animals less depressing. It was all about making it seem less depressing. And these changes were specifically made for the people's benefit. Almost like Carl wanted the visitors to seem like they were on a safari in Germany. Checks out. But in the end, it was just for aesthetics. I mean, the animals don't care about cool looking rock formations or a little pond. You know, it was all about getting visitors to buy tickets and have an experience. So if you've been to a zoo recently, it's almost guaranteed that the layout was inspired by Mr. Carl Hagenbeck, which I thought was quite wild, because all the zoos do look like that. To be fair, Carl's entire legacy isn't all that bad, I guess. I mean, he really did love animals. Cool, you know? And rumor has it that he treated the animals better than any other zoo out there. At the time. For example, other zoo owners would beat the shit out of their animals to keep them in line. And if the animals still acted out after the beatings, they'd get burned with like flaming hot irons. So that's cool that Carl didn't do that, you know? So instead of being punishment focused towards the animals, Carl's method was based on rewarding good behavior. And these kinder, quote unquote, techniques eventually replaced the harsher methods. So yeah, I mean, it's safe to say that Carl
what a good guy.
is a pretty big deal in the zoo community. I mean, the man did build a reputation for himself. But of course, you know, there's a whole other side to it. God damn it, it gets real dark. I mean, he wasn't just known for his fancy habitats at Tierpark or snatching up defenseless animals from the wilds. And honestly, this other thing he's known for makes the whole, like, killing the walrus mom and stealing her baby look not that bad. This is when we welcome to the scene something called ethnological expositions, aka human zoos. Oh God, eye roll. Yeah, human zoos. So let me tell you, Carl little old Carl was inspired by his trips to Africa when again he had another light bulb moment. He came up with a brand new business plan. He thought to himself, hey, if people like looking at exotic animals, I bet they'll like looking at people they've never seen before too. Beginning in 1874, Carl and his people would go out and find indigenous families that were struggling to make ends meet.
Oof.
And Carl would approach them and be like, hey.
Yeah, I expected this to be a part of it. It's so fucked up that we had actual human zoos. Unbelievable.
I'll give you some cash, but you gotta come back with me to Germany. And indigenous families were seeing a way out of their poverty. And, many of them felt like they had no choice but to say yes. So Carl used this strategy with indigenous people from Africa, East India, really anywhere he wanted, and he would relocate them to Germany. And he wasn't just taking one or two people, he would be taking entire families away from their tribes and would put them on display for people to gawk at. Some of the indigenous people were exhibited alongside huts and would wear bones as hair accessories. For example, like putting Egyptians on display and having them ride camels in front of pyramids that like Carl most likely made out of paper mache. Carl once again exhibited them in a stereotyped version of their quote-unquote real home life. And again, it was all an illusion, a performance really, a very problematic performance. But the thing is, visitors to Carl's exhibitions loved this shit, and more people kept paying to come see it. He was so successful that Carl took his human zoo exhibit on tour in different parts of Europe, like Paris, London, and Berlin. Now I wondered, why the hell was this so popular? Well, Giles Boych, an anthropologist, said people were, quote, fascinated by this type of exoticism, which they had never seen before. But there is also another reason why this worked. Many of these indigenous women didn't have a top on. They were bare-breasted, which is so, a cherry on top, And like this was very taboo in Europe at the time. So people just want to see some titties. Science journalist Charlene Saitoun said that these exhibits were kind of like finding a loophole in society that usually frowned upon nudity. I mean, not only are these women taken from their lives and their families, but now they're being sexualized and just fully taken advantage of. It's just really creepy and so gross, right? Now you're probably wondering, did these people at least get paid? Did they get compensation for sacrificing their lives to be there? Well, I guess Carl did technically pay his performers. We don't know how much they made, but look, this is dark history, and I'm sure we can assume that it wasn't a lot. I mean, it's hard to negotiate or stand up for yourself to get more pay when you don't even speak the same language, which many of them didn't. Now, the people being exploited by Carl, quote unquote, performed several times a day, and white Europeans just gawked at them from morning to night. And when they went on tour, it was kind of how carnivals and circuses did it. But constantly changing locations along with bad working conditions turns out to be a very deadly combination. In 1880, an Inuit family of 8 from a region in Canada died of smallpox because they weren't vaccinated by the people in charge. And then an entire group of Sioux natives lost their lives to measles and pneumonia, all because the people in charge weren't taking care of them. We actually have a first-hand account of one of the people who was in one of Carl's exhibitions. His name was Theodore Wanja Michael. Now, Theodore and his family had all been on display, and they knew the dark reality of how bad these human zoos could be. However, they never publicly told their story because it was so painful to them. But then in 2013, when Theodore was 88 years old, he decided to speak out about his treatment within the human zoo and even wrote a book about it. Now, in this book, we learn that Theodore's mother was German and his father was from Cameroon, a country in Central Africa. When the family moved to Berlin in the early 1900s, it became very clear that they couldn't find any jobs because of their race. So it felt like the only option they had was to become performers in one of these human zoos. Theodore said, quote, "We danced and performed together with fire eaters, but very early on I began to hate these shows and my participation in them." Theodore went on to explain that in these human zoos, he and his family were what people in Europe imagined what African people were like. They thought of them as, quote, uneducated and cultureless savages, unquote. Oh, God. He recalled stories about how strangers ran their fingers through his hair because they had never seen African hair before. He said, quote, they sniffed at me to see whether I was real or not. They were just treating him like a freaking animal, you know? Carl continued to run his human zoos until 1931. I mean, let's do some math here. Boop, boop, boop. Yeah, I did it. That means these ran for about 57 years.
Piece of shit.
Yeah,
Jesus.
That's a long time. Now, it may seem like Carl was the only guy putting on these human zoos, but sadly, he wasn't the only one. Human zoos have been around since 1836. They were big in Paris, Hamburg, Barcelona, Milan, even in the United States, and they were seen as a form of mass entertainment. The human zoos continued for many, many years, and the last one didn't even close until the 2000s, which completely blew my mind, but facts. In the early 2000s, we were
what?
Chicken fries from Burger King and watching The Real World, and somewhere on the planet there was like a human zoo going on.
What the fuck? Where?
Oh, God. And look, there's so much middle ground here, and sadly, we don't have enough time to cover it in this episode. But we're going to add some more links about the history of human zoos down below if you're interested in learning more. And you can let me know in the comments if you guys want a whole episode dedicated to human zoos, because it's real fucked. Now, while treatment of people and animals in zoos was always pretty sketchy, shit really hits the fan when we go to war. Back in the 1800s, Philadelphia was essentially like the capital of America. Everything went down in Philly. It was hustling, it was bustling, it was a shit. And in 1859, they decided it was time for America to get her own zoo, and it was naturally going to be built in Philly. I'm not talking about like a little rinky-dink zoo with a couple turkeys and a chimp that chain smokes, you know, which was a real thing in Albania, but this zoo, it was going to be huge. And the plans for it, they actually called it a zoological garden, complete with hundreds of animals and a whole staff of keepers. And most of all, it was going to be classy, you know? The city of Philly decided it was going to be a zoo that prioritized science and education, which sounds nice, right? But of course, like, these plans hit a slight road bump when something called the Civil War happens. So it got put on pause for a minute, but good news, America won. And then 15 years later, the plans for this luxury zoo garden picked back up. On July 1st, 1874, the Philadelphia Zoological Garden opened with almost 300 animals on display. Antelopes, lions, zebras, kangaroos, elephant, rhino. I guess we were like 50 monkeys. Well, that's a lot of monkeys. And a bunch of reptiles. Cool. The people of Philly were, not ready, really. And when I say not ready, I mean people were straight up abusive and inappropriate with the animals, of course. We can't have nice things. I guess visitors would come in, they would reach through the cages, they would poke at the animals, they would use their umbrellas and like poke their umbrellas at them, you know? It got so bad that in just a week, the zoo's gentle sloth, that's what it was called, gentle sloth, well, he was killed from all the aggressive poking and jabbing that was going on from the visitors. Sad. Anyway, to everyone except that sloth, the Philly Zoo was considered a massive success. I mean, it was drawing in huge crowds every single day. And at this time, lots of advancements in zookeeping started happening. The Bronx Zoo started trying to help out endangered animals like the American bison. And slowly but surely, it looks like there's a push for zoos to really start looking out for their animals and protect them, not just pimp them out for tickets and money, you know? But then World War I rolls around, and a lot of that progress just gets thrown right out the window. During this time, food starts being rationed, which meant there was a limited amount of how many groceries you could buy, specifically for basics like meat and dairy. The zoos were screwed because, I'm sure maybe you can imagine, they have a lot of mouths to feed. And that's when the zoo diets get a little sketchy. So normally they would feed the animals like beef or chicken, but then American zoos started feeding their big meat.
See, I was wondering about this. Oh no. Do I want to know? Oh God. Jesus Christ.
Eating animals like dog food or sometimes even horse meat. I'm looking at you, Aldi.
Horse meat? Aldi, what? Jesus.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, Aldi, they were selling horse meat. Anyways.
What? I'm sorry, you can't just drop that. Jesus Christ. Holy shit. What? Is this real? Is it... What? Outdated? What does that mean? The issue has been resolved and did not affect consumers in the US. Okay, but... what? Hold on. What the fuck? What the fuck? It's the subject of a minor scandal that broke in February 2013 when Aldi stores in the United Kingdom withdrew some frozen, ready-to-eat food products from sale after the discovery that they actually contained horse meat rather than 100% beef indicated on their labeling. Horse meat, yep. What the actual fuck? How do you make a mix-up that bad? The fuck? Miguel. Ugh. How? Aldi said it felt angry and let down by its French supplier, Miguel. Yeah. I imagine so. A little bit let down. Between 30 and 100% horse meat. I mean, it's been resolved since, but Jesus Christ. I don't know. I guess they just had some horses. I don't even get, like, why. Yeah, like... I would freak out, too. I don't know. It can't taste that similar to beef. I wonder if you would be able to tell. If you would be like, this is weird.
As the food shortage in the war got worse, zoos had to get more creative, let's say. Look, randomly this naval base had a bunch of baby bears. Let's not ask questions, let's just move forward. So the naval base donates all of these cubs to the San Diego Zoo. So the zoo, they get all these cubs, and they're like, hey, we already have like a lot of bears. Too many.
I wonder if I've ever had horse meat now. Thanks for that. I know. I'm thinking about that too. Like, what kind of meats have I had before? Well, a mammal's a mammal, I guess. I don't know.
You know, we got too many bears. And because this is wartime, and again, food is scarce, the San Diego Zoo does something absolutely vile. They end up deciding to slaughter all the adult bears and keep only the baby bears. Because people love baby bears, you know? And it's all about keeping the visitors happy.
Oh my
Fuck
god.
the bears. After slaughtering all these bears, they're like, well, we're not going to waste all that delicious bear meat, you know?
Jesus.
So the San Diego Zoo actually made the Sweeney Todd-ass decision.
Ain't no fucking way, dude. They just murdered bears for food. Oh my god. It's too late now. Alright. Well, good night. Sorry for that revelation. Yeah, this is so fucked. Oof. I'm gonna need to smoke another one.
To sell all their dead bears to local hotels to be cooked and served to the guests. Now, the zoo director apparently defended this move, saying that it kept money coming into the zoo. So if you were staying at San Diego hotels around the end of World War I hope you didn't order the berry delicious scramble at brunch, because you were probably eating a bear, you know? Berry delicious bear. Now, zoo attendance was still pretty high during both of the wars. You know, people, they wanted to escape from all the horrific news and just be distracted. And the zoo was a great place to do that. But little did the visitors know that their little oasis was actually doing cutting-edge, secret experiments. specifically for the war effort. And some of these experiments did not end very well for the animals.
Ain't no way,
A
dude.
polar bear was forced to drink boric acid, which is a poison, so
fuck?
that the Navy could study the chemical effects on the bear's brain. So they did
fuck?
that. And then it died,
Why?
you know, because it was drinking poison. So they were just using the
Why?
animals at their disposal as lab rats. But during World War II, plenty of zoos didn't have enough money to do experiments. I mean, let alone feed their animals. And these zoos turned into full-on death camps. Oh, God. Between not having enough food to keep the animals from
Lord.
starvation and, like, not having enough fuel to keep the climates warm enough for them, being a zoo animal in the early 1900s was not ideal, you know? Not great. Some would say risky. And to make it even darker, slaughtering animals to save resources usually had to be done by the same zookeepers whose jobs were, well, up until then, to care for the animals. Imagine being a zookeeper and you're like raising a baby spider monkey. Like every day, you go up, you feed him, you're like, hey, spider monkey, you're so cute, you know? You're watching him grow, stare into his little spider monkey eyes. And then one day, the zoo
That's not a spider monkey, but okay, Bailey.
can no longer afford to keep your cute little special spider monkey friend. So your boss hands you a gun and tells you to take care of it with a little winky face, you know, take care of it. Oh, and don't forget to do the zebras too. They gotta go. Oh, and you can't go home until it's done. Thanks. Well, this is exactly what happened. The Boston Zoo killed almost all of their monkeys because they needed to cut costs. The Cedar Rapids Zoo in Iowa, well, I guess they ended up executing 4 of their bears, 4 foxes, a wolf, 2 bison, a coyote, and a bunch of alligators. They all had to go. Couldn't afford it anymore. Zookeepers and civilians worried that, look, like if the zoo got caught in some kind of war crossfire situation, you know, dangerous animals would probably like escape and even attack them on the street. Zoos that could afford to made special enclosures for their highly dangerous animals. So if they did get bombed, they would not escape and, you know, attack people. Could you imagine like an alligator just coming up to your house? Or what else is scary? A bison? A walrus? Well, I'd let him in. Come on in, walrus. You're in. The easiest and cheapest thing to do was to simply get rid of the problem. If it's poisonous or dangerous, just get rid of it. Kill it. And many of them did just that.
It's so sad. It's so sad. You, like, ripped them from their home. Like, or had them bred and, like, just to have them murdered. Like, come on.
Zoos in New York gave all of the zookeepers a .44 caliber rifle and even gave them shooting lessons at the police armory so that they could ultimately shoot any dangerous animals that might get out if there were an explosion. Now, it was even worse in Europe. Between 1939 and 1944, zookeepers at the London Zoo slaughtered nearly 200 of their animals. 400 animals were killed at the Hamburg Zoo, either because they were hit by enemy fire or shot on sight if they had gotten out of their cages. And in Europe especially, tons of animals died simply because no one was around to take care of them. And then when the temperatures dropped or they ran out of food, these poor little animals just died in their cages. Hagenbeck seals back at the Hamburg Zoo were so scared by the sounds of bombs dropping that they swam like crazy around their habitat until their hearts just gave out. That's so sad. In all of these cases, the animals were perfectly
this is breaking my heart. Jesus.
healthy, and I'm sure there's a case to be made that they would have survived the war just fine if they'd been left in nature, where they could at least hunt and forage for themselves. But that gets at the bigger question of, you know, is it ever ethical to take an animal from their natural habitat and put it in jail? I know we aren't killing monkeys or bears and selling their meat to hotels now, at least I think, you know. But if World War III started tomorrow, what would happen to zoos? That might feel like a silly question, but really, if like another war happened, would you be thinking about zoos? No. At least I wouldn't. I'm more worried about like getting grandma to the bomb shelter, where all the cans of Spam are at, not the poor animals. Oh God. Just like every other big company we talk about here, zoos today have undergone a rebrand. a transformation, if you will. Zoos used to be all about like showing off the animals, you know? But now, allegedly, they're all about conservation, which essentially means preserving these incredible animals by making sure they don't go extinct. They started doing this in the 1980s as a way to make zoos more about education and less centered on entertainment. One way they do this is through captive breeding, which basically means busting out that good old-fashioned turkey baster and getting other animals knocked up. You know, the ones that are about to go extinct, or maybe they're not very good at breeding. They just did it themselves. This is formally known as artificial insemination. The San Diego Zoo has
I remember during the pandemic, the pandas finally started conceiving naturally because they just got left alone more.
Has been doing this with some of their southern white rhinos, which were almost extinct. Yay? I'm not sure. Some zoos even do this with pandas, who typically, I guess, like, they don't like to breed. They don't want to. They're busy. They just want to chill and eat bamboo. And
they're shy.
And just be cute, you know? So it makes sense that zoos who already have the animals in captivity would maybe want to go the extra step to make the species keep on living so we can keep on learning about them and loving them. There are organizations out there doing amazing work trying to get animals in captivity back into the wild through something called reintroduction programs. Now, these programs are essentially trying to reintroduce the animals into their natural habitat. Be one with the trees, you know? But turns out it's a lot more complicated than that. The problem with this is that these animals are bred to keep living in the zoo just like their parents. Many of the animals couldn't even survive when they were released back into the wild. You know, like just picture an orangutan in the jungle for like the first time ever. Being like, now what do I do? There's no people. Where's my food? What do I do now? They don't even know how to survive. They don't know how to take care of themselves. They need some basic life training, but they didn't get that at the zoo. Good on these people for trying, you know, they're out there doing the Lord's work. But it turns out if we're looking at the numbers, these programs, they're kind of a flop. Kinda. I'm trying to be nice, you know. For example, a group of 500 orangutans were released into the wild in Africa. Unfortunately, they didn't survive long because they literally couldn't climb trees. It was like a great day to be a lion. Bad day to be that ape. I mean, it's like kicking your indoor cat onto the streets and expecting him to just adjust to a diet of garbage and birds. Like, it's gonna be hard out there. It's gonna be rough. So then what's the point of creating more of these animals if they can't even live their lives in the wild like they're supposed to, you know? It's almost like zoos created a problem that only they can solve. Interesting. I don't think that's interesting. So, what have we learned today, friends? Well, the history of the zoo is questionable, right? To say the least. At the end of the day, it's still a bunch of animals in cages. And I mean, they didn't ask to be there, especially the animals that were born in captivity. They don't know any different. Which is sad, you know, especially for bigger animals like giraffes and elephants. They're just stuck with a cage that's small and people are just staring at them all day. It must be boring too, you know? What do you do? Kick around a ball? When zoos are brought into the conversation these days, most people say they don't like the idea of animals being locked up, that they should be set free and like live in the wild. And, you know, I think many people will totally agree with that idea. At the end of the day, just let the animals be. But, and there's always a but, throughout the years, zoos have promised or said that they do indeed take care of their animals. And as we've learned today, you know, the lie detector test determined that was a lie. So it's kind of like, do you just trust what they're saying? I mean, they told us back in the olden days that they were taking care of the animals, but were they? You know? So they say they're doing better now, and I guess all we can do is hope that they are. And then animal sanctuaries and these conservation organizations enter the picture, right? And these places also claim to be looking out for the animal's best interest. I'm sure many of them, or some of them at least, are. But that's also what Carl Hagenbeck said at the start, too. So,
right. I feel like that's cap. I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of, like, biologists and, you know, caretakers that do care for the animals and want to do the best to look after them, but capitalism destroys everything.
Who can we really trust? You know, if only animals could talk, they'd let us know. Look, it's okay to question those in charge and ask for more information. Like, hey, is that animal really happy? Or like, what are you doing? What are you doing for the animals? Well, everyone, thank you for learning with me today. Remember, don't be afraid to ask questions, you know? To get the whole story. Where the fuck do your animals come from? Yeah, you deserve that. I'd love to hear your guys' reactions to today's story, so make sure to use the hashtag #DarkHistory over on social media so I can follow along. And also join me over on my YouTube, where you can watch these episodes on Thursday after the podcast airs. And while you're there, you can also catch my murder, mystery, and makeup. I hope you have a great rest of your day, you make good choices, and I'll be talking to you next.
Well, that was harrowing. Holy shit. Maybe a quick musical break. Oh my god. When she said dark history, she was not kidding.
Leftist ass like corn on the cob. I'm ready. I will eat your ass. I will eat your leftist ass like corn on the cob. I'm ready. I will eat you. I will eat your ass. My children aren't going hungry. I'll do it. I'll drink your blood. And I'm starting to think about having to eat my neighbors. You think I like size it up? I'm gonna haul him up back chain. Chop his ass up, size it up. I'm gonna haul him up back chain. Chop, 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 chop. I will eat your leftist ass like corn on the cob. I'm ready. I will eat your ass. I will eat your leftist ass like corn on the cob. I'm ready. I will eat you. I will eat your ass. I'll barbecue your ass flat. I will cook your ass up so fast, and I'll tell them, oh, I killed a cow out back, baby. You think Christ would eat somebody? He would never do that. I will. I'm ready to hang them up, gut them and skin them and chop them up. You know what? I'm ready. I will eat your leftist ass like corn on the cob. I'm ready. I will eat your ass. I will eat your leftist ass like corn on the cob. I'm ready. I will eat you. I will eat your ass. I will eat your leftist ass like corn on the cob. I'm ready. I will eat your ass. I will eat your leftist ass like corn on the cob. I'm ready. I will eat you. I will eat your ass. And that's why I want the globalists to know. I will eat your ass first. I swear to God, if it's the last thing I do, I'm gonna get my hands around your throat.
You guys, my dad literally just got punched in the face for being a Trump supporter. Like, that was it. Just for being a Trump supporter. And I do it again. Bop, bop. And I do it again. Bop, bop, bop. Do it again. Bop, bop, bop. Do it again. Bop, bop, bop. I do it again. Hold up. Bop, bop, bop. Do it. Bop, bop. Do it again. Bop, bop, bop. Do it. Bop, bop. Do it again. Hold up. Bop, bop, bop. Do it. Bop, bop. Do it again. Bop, bop, bop. Do it. Bop, bop. And I do it again. Guys, my dad literally just got punched in the face for being a Trump supporter. Like, that was it. And I do it again. Hold up. Bop, bop, bop. Do it. Bop, bop. Do it again. Bop, bop, bop. Do it. Bop, bop. Do it again. Hold up. Bop, bop, bop. Do it. Bop, bop. Do it again. Bop, bop, bop. Do it. Bop, bop. And I do it again. Hold up. Bop, bop. And I do it again. Bop, bop, bop. Do it again. Bop, bop, bop. Do it again. Bop, bop, bop. Do it again. Hold up. Bop, bop, bop. Do it. Bop, bop. Do it again. Bop, bop, bop. Do it. Bop, bop. And I do it again. I'm Marquez. It's you, boy. And I do it again.
Tonight, we come here to answer a very important question in everybody's mind. Why in the hell are we still doing this? I know there are questions about whether we should gather here tonight because of COVID? Well, they're fully vaccinated and boosted. Vaxxed and boosted. Vaxxed and boosted. How to do that? Just contact your favorite Fox News reporter. We're all here, vaxxed and boosted. This is the first time the president attended this dinner in 6 years. It's understandable. We had a horrible plague, followed by 2 years of COVID. Just imagine if my predecessor came to this dinner this year. Now that would really have been a real coup if that occurred. I'm not really here to roast the GOP. A lot of people say the Republican Party is too extreme, too divisive, too controlled by one person. Ronald Reagan said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear this wall down. Today's Republicans say, tear down Mickey Mouse's house. The Republicans seem to support one fella, some guy named Brandon. He's having a really good year. I'm kind of happy for him. They're fully vaccinated and boosted. Vaxxed and boosted. Vaxxed and boosted. How to do that? Just contact your favorite Fox News reporter. We're all here. Vaxxed and boosted. Fox News, I'm really sorry. Well, why? Your preferred candidate lost the last election. To make it up to you, I'm happy to give my chief of staff to you all so we can tell Sean Hannity what to say every day. Trevor's great. When I was elected, he did the show and he called me America's new dad. Let me tell you something, pal. I'm flattered anybody would call me a new anything. Oh my God. You've heard me say many times, and here in America, good journalism, good satire about our leaders is quintessentially an American thing. There's not a damn thing this country can do when we stand united and do it together. They're fully vaccinated and boosted. Vaxxed and boosted. Vaxxed and boosted. How to do that? Just contact your favorite Fox News reporter. We're all here. Vaxxed and boosted.
Okie dokie. Now, we can do the off-grid rabbit hole thing.
You know, ever since I was young, I always wanted to live with a sense of adventure. So that's why I'm getting into off-grid content. You know, I just love the idea of being self-reliant, self-sufficient.
Oh my God.
Thanks, babe. Aww. Oh, so thirsty. Small batch frappuccino.
Small batch.
It was truly only a matter of time before the YouTube algorithm sent me down the funnel of off-grid homesteading content. Being from pure Michigan, I love the outdoors. I love camping. I love looking at bugs. I love identifying birds with my dad. I've also been obsessed with tiny houses for a while now in a kind of morbid fascination type of way. There's something about watching a family of four cram into a mobile bunker while the host giggles about the unpredictable housing market. There are only so many episodes I can watch in a row before I feel like there becomes a moral obligation for the host to mention that the real housing problem is that we don't treat it as a basic human right.
They need to sell their house now so they won't be paying a big house mortgage, a tiny house mortgage, and student loans all at the same time.
But by God, I will watch all 4 hours of you trying to fit your piano and baby crib into one. I'll do it. I've done it. Anyways, all to say, not even my love for the outdoors or yelling at Tiny House Nation could prepare me for the endless abyss of... Now, the off-grid grifter is just one variety of off-grid person under the overarching off-grid umbrella. Here's some other categories close to my heart. You got your standard doomsday couple. You got your illegal camping videos, which are very helpful and informative. There's an entire genre.
Whoops. I love the illegal camping videos. I forget that guy's name. Ooh, he's really popular. I forgot who I watched him with. Carter, maybe?
You got your illegal camping videos, which are very helpful and informative. There's an entire genre of hot girl almost naked in thumbnail video. And the hot girl category actually dovetails into two separate off-grid genres. Actual hot girl content.
Oh yeah, Steve Wallace. This guy. Maybe we can watch some of this in our wind down section.
And video with hot girl thumbnail, but the actual content has negative sexual vibes. I cannot emphasize enough how many naked women are on these thumbnails. I mean, maybe YouTube just knows me, but they know you too. There are men in the woods reinventing the wheel over and over and over and over again.
I wanted to make
Classic.
a steam-powered car. I probably will do it, but it won't be so much a public thing.
And of course, the classic Sapphics renovating a camper to run away videos. And I'm sure there are many, many, many more. Comment below with your favorite off-grid subgenre. You can file this video under deconstructing off-grid content, off-grid content. But what makes an off-gridder an off-grid grifter? Wait. Yes, that makes sense. Yes. What makes an off-gridder an off-grid grifter? And I don't even mean that off-grid grifters make money, or that they have money. What makes an off-grid grifter is a lack of transparency about that money. Just compare these folks, who are very upfront about the realities of living off-grid.
People with a lot of money, people who have a lot of acreage in beautiful places, they have brand new vehicles, and you think, what in the world is real? How do these people pay their bills? How can they have all this stuff if what they are is really remote? Well, the chances are they're not really remote.
If you don't have a decent amount of savings to begin with, it can be very challenging. So even though I'm spending less on my lease than I was on my rent, there are all these additional things. So to be honest, I'm working a lot more now than I used to. It was very, very financially stressful.
With this person, who's very vague.
A couple years ago, I bought 2 rustic cabins in the woods. And
Casual.
I've been living there ever since. And I love them, and I still own them. I, about 2 months ago, purchased this place. But that being said, I did have my mom co-sign with me.
And just to say it out loud, my inner legal eagle is speaking. I am not accusing anyone of fraud or any other criminal activity. Off-grid grifters can pop up in any of the off-grid subcategories, and they can be hard to spot. Like those.
That chick, I watched her for a while. I think she also had another place that she bought and sold. Unless I'm mixing her up with another girl. I don't remember.
Cell towers disguised as trees, which to me look exactly like the trees from Lego Island. But anyways, how can you spot an off-grid grifter in the wild? Well, lucky for you, I've been able to identify some common characteristics, so you know what to look out for. Of course, the most obvious flag of red is how the off-gridder responds to questions about how they could afford to move off-grid. It takes a chunk of capital to construct a homestead. It can cost much less than buying a house, which is definitely the reason that many people choose this lifestyle, but it ain't free, and it's usually not cheap.
We found 6 acres just 3.5 miles from downtown Boone, and we're able to create this beautiful place not only for us to live, but for students to live with.
Glossing over what I hope is an obvious ethical question about living with students, there is a large gap between finding 6 acres of land and buying 6 acres of land. Hey, wait a minute. Yeah, how did he?
From the beginning, hired students to help us with all of the work here on the site. We hired a sawyer to come in and create lumber for us that we could use for decking and framing on the various structures that we knew we were going to build. We built this tiny house in my father's driveway. I hired a Appalachian State student to come with us for the summer, and he and I worked to build the tiny house.
The most egregious example of yada yada yadaing over the money is when one rich off-grid YouTuber will go around and document other rich people's architecturally interesting off-grid homes.
I own 400 acres. You know, as a young person coming on the land, I could...
This is so pretty. Oh my god, this is so pretty. I love this. The little greenhouse. And this little, like, curvy roof. I love that. Oh my god.
100 acres. You know, as a young person coming on the land, I could not believe that nobody wanted this.
Yeah, I also don't believe that nobody wanted it.
We came on the land and there was no water, no roads, no bridges. There was nothing, but there were trees. You got to remember, we came on the land, we had absolutely no money. This cost $8,500 to build.
Well, it doesn't sound like you had no money. it sounds like you had at least $8,500. Even if the houses are not architecturally interesting, they'll still go and check it out if they're in the same tax bracket.
I learned a lot of things co-founding Airbnb. Can't be a UFO. Nobody wants a UFO in their backyard. They want something that feels like a home.
It's almost like there are always people who belong to it's called a class, who all happen to have some sort of particular
capital
resource in abundance. I'm at a loss. If only there was a name for that. Class or resource. Besides being obscure about how they've paid for their homestead, off-grid grifters are also obscure about the labor that goes into their homestead.
We did almost all the work ourselves. I think if we had it hired out, we'd probably be spending around $400,000 probably. One of my favorite pieces here at the A-frame is this painting. It was actually painted by my father. He's a professional impressionist oil painter. He actually helped a lot with this build. He was here with me probably, I would say half the time I was building here, he was helping it.
We did almost all the work ourselves.
So, just to recap, being an off-gridder is all about being self-reliant, which means doing everything by yourself, except when you need some students to work for free, or cheap, or when you need specialized laborers like a sawyer, a pipe fitter, or a welder. So you do almost all the work yourself, implying that it's just you and maybe your partner too. But then on YouTube, you show a photo of what is clearly 3 men working. And then in another part of the video, you admit that you're literally a contractor. So you probably have some of your guys help out without even thinking of it as outside help because you own them. And also, you couldn't have done any of this without your dad. You know, self-reliant. Another
yeah, self-made, self-built. So independent. Wow.
Flavor available in the palette of off-grid grifters is when an off-gridder is a little too philosophical about how or why they chose this life for themselves and or their family.
This project has taught us so much about what we value and what we enjoy doing. What I love about this journey is just feeling a new connection to the animals and to nature.
While there is absolutely nothing wrong with being passionate about the way you live, some off-gridders are clearly romanticizing and idolizing a life of solitude and self-reliance, not because it was actually good for their mental health, well-being, or growth, but because it feeds their ego and presents an opportunity to prove their masculinity via seclusion. An attitude as outdated as a 1919 hit-and-miss engine.
I have an old 1919 hit-and-miss engine.
There are also off-grid grifters who I simply label as grifter because it's clear that they don't actually know what they're doing, but present themselves as if they do. Like our buddy Shadow here.
Just got tired of the city, got tired of where mankind's going, and always had the idea I could do it better.
Who I admire for trying to live free from capitalism.
I try to live without money as much as possible.
But who maybe doesn't know how water filtration works.
This is for your natural filtration, as well as for chickens. So when you're done your dishes or done your brushing your teeth, you pour it onto here, and then when it goes back into the ecosystem, it doesn't wreck your ecosystem that you're in.
Now, when I first watched this, I was pretty sure organic filtration wasn't that simple. And any questions I had were confirmed by this dad who lives on a houseboat, explaining his gray water filtration method.
There's nothing dumped overboard on the float home. My gray water system is self-contained. It goes through a series of filtrations, which is then pumped up to the flower boxes, and evaporation takes care of it from that point.
Yeah, I think those chickens are just eating gray water.
So this is the library, and this is the biolab. This is where I do a lot of the research of what's going on in the environment that I'm in. And this is how I know what kind of poisons are toxifying our species.
Well, that's a relief.
Drinking water is still an issue. I still haven't built any type of filtration systems yet. I have a few ideas.
Now, there are various degrees of audacity.
Why is that not the first thing you would do? Why would you not get water first? Oh my god. That makes my head hurt. for a while.
And I am certainly not trying to say that everyone who uses their inheritance to build a cabin in the woods is a grifter or unethical. It's just a pattern of behavior that paints off-grid living in a way that at best is not obtainable, and at worst encourages someone to cut themselves off from support systems and community in order to feel like they're 13 again reading my side of the mountain for a book report.
I've completely failed. I'm really embarrassed about this. I guess I'm just gonna have to stop doing it. This is ridiculous. I just can't keep doing this.
It's really disheartening to like work at this so hard for 7.5 years, 8 years, and just to get the legs cut out from underneath you, and they won't even tell you why.
But mostly, I just find these videos fascinating to watch. The characters, the explanations, the compostable toilets, and I'm already caught up on Tiny House Nation. What if I told you there was one fully grown adult who encapsulates all of these qualities? An off-grid grifter, the likes of which I have not seen in my many years of being around men who wear camo unironically. Did I mention I'm from Michigan? Rural Michigan. Why, yes, that font is too small. Thank you for asking. This is Brent.
Hello there. My name is Brent.
If Brent were
Hi.
to tell you his story,
Hi,
he'd say
Brent.
that he used all of his life savings to buy this old mining town called Cerro Gordo, 3 hours outside of LA.
Oh yeah, I think I saw it, like the video where he was like announcing buying this shit.
He's passionate about history and can't wait to fix up Cerro Gordo for generations to come and learn about the people who lived here over 150 years ago. While he's completely alone in this old ghost town, we watched him uncover old articles that subscribers have sent to him or things that he found online. He loves walking around and talking about all the little details of the structures and the mine itself.
I go down there mainly to discover history. That said, there still is some very cool minerals down there.
Along with images of maps and charts. But if I were to tell Brent's story, I would put it like this. This is Brent, a former investment banker who became a partner in a marketing firm. He bought an old mining town for $1.4 million in 2018 with an investment group whose members...
Holy shit. Fucking classic.
include a Hulu executive and a former American Apparel executive, and he can't wait to fix it up for all the people pre-gaming Coachella.
We hope to have this online in a month or two.
Ain't no way.
Depending on how the
Ain't no
coronavirus
way.
thing goes,
Ain't no way. It's for fucking Coachella Airbnbs, dude.
this could be the first place you come and stay if you visit us here.
The idea of preserving the town of Cerro Gordo and celebrating its history seems really important to Brent.
I just think it's so cool to see people rallying around a piece of history.
I also like preserving cool towns. I think most people do. His audience certainly seems like they're also into it. He's amassed a huge following on YouTube with a passionate fan base who watch his monthly videos thinking that he might have died between uploads while exploring the Cerro Gordo mine.
There's a dynamite box, and in the dynamite box, there's denim.
Well, let me get around the corner so when it does explode. Oh, shit.
In the first Ghost
Bro.
Town Living video I ever watched,
you doing?
Brent shows off the various houses that he plans to Airbnb.
The second house we hope to get on Airbnb is the Bellshot house. You know, it's where I typically stay, so I try to keep it a little nice.
He gives a tour of the old
A little nice. That shit was gross.
American Hotel, along with all the historical relics that remained at the site.
You see the saloon and the American Hotel?
But just 2 videos later, the hotel burned to the ground.
About
What
5
the
hours
fuck?
ago, around 2:30 in the morning, a fire burned down our hotel here at Cerro Gordo, the American
Bro.
Hotel. Last
What the
night
fuck?
I woke up to an explosion of the propane tank in the hotel, and by the time I got outside, the building was already halfway down.
The American Hotel was presumably fine for 100 years until he showed up, and within weeks...
Curious how that happened right away when you got there. And it just happened to blow up. Bro. Yeah, no shit, it went down immediately. It's a wood cabin. An old wood cabin. No shit.
weeks, the propane tank blew up. A propane tank near the old flammable desert hotel. That's made out of wood. Now, yes, it is a tragedy that the historic hotel burnt down. And I'm sure the people watching his channel were very emotionally affected by this. I mean, Brent spent his entire life savings and a bunch of investors' money to turn the hotel into an Airbnb, and now it is a pile of dust. But knowing that he is backed up by extremely rich investors made
he can just rebuild it, right? I mean, I'm sure he had enough photo and video.
the last part of this video that much more, well...
We could use some help. A lot of you have been very supportive of the town and our progress. And if you could donate, we could
You're
use
kidding.
any dollar that's given is going directly into this.
Shut the
Close,
fuck up.
And you have any type of construction skills or cleaning skills or even, you know, a truck to help move some stuff. We need the help too. We need the manpower.
Wow. Wow, fuck you. He is such a grifter. God damn.
We're gonna rebuild. What other option do we have but rebuild? So
It finally happened. I finally saw something that I would actually say is cringe. Brent! It's just you and me here talking, okay? No one is listening. Everyone else watching this video, cover your ears for a second, okay? This is just between me and my friend Brent. Did you not get fire insurance? I mean, buddy, I'm coming to Cerro Gordo, staying at your 150-year-old building that you don't have insured? I know, at least in California, it's practically impossible to get a mortgage without fire insurance.
Upstairs is where the rooms used to be.
That's crazy.
No visitors have been allowed upstairs in quite a number of years. It's not structurally sound up there.
Wait, so if the building wasn't structurally sound, to the point where you're not even supposed to go to the second floor, makes it seem like Brent was going to have to tear down the whole building anyways, especially if he wanted people to stay in the American hotel.
Well, no. Not necessarily. He probably could have renovated the floors and the stairs, like, added reinforcements or something.
Almost as if he had a pretty big motivation to... I'm not gonna say it. The fact that we don't know whether or not he had fire insurance is a testament to how vague these videos can be. It's either, no, there wasn't fire insurance, which means that was incredibly irresponsible, or there was fire insurance, which opens a whole other can of worms, since he's asking money from his audience to save his dream of Westworld minus robots. Or some other secret third thing that I'm not allowed to know because I don't have a 401k. Do you not show proof of insurance when you put your place up on Airbnb? Do businesses like theme parks and tourist traps not need to be insured?
and Cerro Gordo is going to be here after I'm gone, and there's going to be a hotel here. And that hotel is going to have the story of, you know, the fire of 2020.
Whoa, no. You don't get to watch the hotel burn down and then say, actually, that's part of the history that you are so intent on preserving. What Brent witnessed was the textbook definition of the opposite of preservation. Arguably the most historic building in the entire town is gone, burnt to a crisp. And even though his entire channel is about him being alone in his ghost town, this is somehow not his fault or his responsibility. And actually, it's yours. Everyone likes to think they're off-grid and self-reliant until their propane tank explodes, and suddenly it's like, why did it take the fire truckies 3 hours to get to me? If I'm being harsh, I'm sorry. The only reason I even came upon Brent's videos is because my friend Harrison, who lives off-grid in Alaska, thought that this was hilarious. I don't know Brent. I have nothing against him personally. It just gives me the squicks to see someone co-opting the language of nonprofit for his for-profit Westworld. We're slowly but surely approaching ever more territory, and I have just as much confidence in Brent as Jenny did in the guy who owns Evermore. From an audience perspective, it gained him tons of sympathy and raised over $100,000 on GoFundMe.
Classic. Classic capitalist move. Corpa. Thank you very much.
And this was back when we were like...
$500,000 goal, by the way.
Like, clapping for nurses. Shit was dire. As I mentioned earlier in this video, one reason I was interested in talking about off-gridders is because of the strange way they talked around finances. And Brent is a prime example of how a marketing executive uses inspiring, emotionally charged language to wave away the financial realities of his situation. Brent uses his marketing skills to romanticize the town,
Something historic is going on here.
its legacy,
And back in the 1800s, they pulled $500 million worth of minerals out of this hole right behind me.
and whatever mineral deposits still remain underground for his taking.
Cerro Gordo Smithsonite goes for thousands of dollars on eBay. I'm not the one selling it, so if it's you, where did you get it and how did you get it?
Here's Brent on the Half Hour Intern podcast in 2016, talking about the media manipulation skills he learned from another partner at his former marketing firm.
Giving any bloggers what they would want for the perfect story and kind of like running with that story, whether there's half-baked truths in there or anything along those lines. Yeah, there's certainly a world that I'd never been exposed to and made me question pretty much every single article that I read online to this day. I know that there's somebody behind it doing something to influence the content within it.
I mean, half of the articles are basically written by the companies themselves. Like, you know, you can see that in the article. It's very obvious. But even these news stories that are obviously written by the news organization might have had a big influence by, you know, any of the businesses mentioned in there. It's just, God, it's just so interesting and
Right,
terrible.
And
It's interesting and terrible.
You know, somewhere along the lines, somebody assumes that it's been fact-checked. So, you know, your local blog might not have the fact-checking standards that, let's say, NBC News does. And then the next size blog isn't going to fact-check because they assume somebody else did. And that's how unreal news becomes reality, is kind of, you know, as you're trading it along, there's a certain expectation that somebody's fact-checking when in reality probably nobody is.
Oh my God. It's making me so
crazy.
dizzy.
Unreal news. Adorable.
Fake news.
Quaint even. 2016, what a virgin of a time. After Brent's baby exploded, the project to rebuild the hotel has been difficult since the town is so remote. Getting a bunch of cement out there is a logistical nightmare. Brent mentions that he looked into hiring a helicopter.
I was looking into renting these massive trucks. I even called a helicopter company that quoted me $167,000 for a day.
But, well, golly gee willikers, you'll never guess. A Fremen Tom Bombadil has arrived, recommended by his subscribers, to save the day with friendship and a mutual love of facial hair and tobacco. The strongest foundation to build a new friendship. And when Brent talks about this newly formed friendship, suddenly any mention of the price tag disappears.
I need 81 yards of concrete delivered here. And he had just seen the road. I remember he kind of looked around and he said, all right, I got you.
And so, the magic man and his magic concrete magically pour into the new foundation of the new hotel after the old one magically burnt down. And look at that! The new building will magically now be up to code and able to magically support a second story. Magic! Maybe I'm in the minority here, but I think the finances of running a place like Cerro Gordo actually seems interesting. But we don't get that. So,
of course,
we'll never know until it opens and I come as a guest wearing a mustache. When Brent isn't building a luxury hotel from the ground up with zero regard for historical building methods, he's doing the second most exciting thing a teenager would do in Cerro Gordo: exploring the abandoned mines.
The fuck?
there too.
Oh, yeah, that's cool, yeah.
To Brent's credit, he has absolutely zero regard for his own safety. And you know what? Top tier content.
But now we're gonna go into the great unknown, you know? See what happens from here.
No thanks.
In this video, Brent has hired some men to lower him down via the elevator shaft. And just listen to these guys neg him on the way down.
Stay out.
Got your phone, take a picture of him. Take the last known photo of the billionaire from Cerro Gordo.
What do these guys know that we don't know?
He used to be a millionaire before he owned a mine.
Brent so clearly wants them to shut the fuck up.
What's a combination to the safe?
Bye, guys.
Yeah, what's a combination to the safe? Where'd you hide all that money?
Bye.
Oh my god. Oh my god. They're just roasting him alive. He's like, ha ha ha.
That money in that suitcase.
Oh, man.
You know, you can edit that out, Brent. Unless he kept it in to make him seem more grounded or something. I don't know. I think he's trying to play like he's in on this joke. He's not.
You know, if you want to come back up, you're going to have to tell us.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that.
Goodbye, cruel world.
Now, surprisingly, or unsurprisingly, I don't know, there is one thing in the mines that will get Brent really excited to talk about money. Levi's blue jeans.
And the reason that these jeans are so interesting is they're a collector's item.
My favorite moment is when he finds a stash, tries to pick it up for the camera, and it just immediately disintegrates in his hands. Jaggings. Our dear Brent even edits screenshots of auction listings into the video to let us know just how much we should be willing to pay for the minerals he collects and the crusty old blue jeans that he peels off the floor of the mines.
People that are really into that piece of clothing will pay upwards of $100,000 sometimes for these jeans. And for me, it's never about the $100,000.
They're a collector's item.
And this might be a bit of a side note, but there's also a video of Brent suffering through a snowstorm, and the entire comment section is people offering extremely helpful and common sense advice. Stuff that even I know from living in Michigan. And he posted a weirdly defensive comment because it sure seems like he still doesn't know anything about living alone in his ghost town after 3 years. Cerro Gordo was established as a mining town to extract as much value as possible from the mountain and channel that revenue into the pockets of whatever mining baron owned it. And now, in the age of social media, a marketing executive is able to buy that abandoned mine, use the idea of a romanticized American West to extract value, not even from the mine, but from his fans. Then when the hotel burns down,
capitalism breeds innovation, am I right?
He gets fans to donate more money through a 501c3 charity so that he doesn't have to pay taxes on his GoFundMe. But Brent also mentions that he has volunteers helping him rebuild.
Whether you're here moving blocks or just watching from home, this channel is what is making this hotel possible.
As in, his fans are doing free labor. I think it's safe to say Brent still has a lot to learn about living off-grid.
4 hours into the hike, and I'm completely lost. The sun goes down, I'll have no idea where to go, but I honestly don't know what to do.
But I do think there's one area where Brent has made huge strides in over the past 3 years. His content. If you compare his recent videos to his earliest, there are some noticeable changes in tone and production quality. Early on, he was much more soft-spoken, going for a kind of intimate conversation vibe.
That stained glass is from a Stevie McQueen movie called Nevada Smith.
Fast forward to today, and it's...
Hello there! My name is Brent.
It's pretty...
Mr. Beast. Classic.
Obvious Brent is trying to model himself after a Johnny Harris or a Casey Neistat. But those two will chase stories and take you on interesting journeys to learn something. Brent is taking us on a journey to his hotel.
Right now, I am sitting on the first floor of the Future American Hotel,
where you can pay him to stay when it's complete. Brent and other off-grid grifters insist that it's not about the money. But a big part of it is the money.
This isn't a project. This isn't a startup. I don't think about it in month-over-month growth.
Sure.
My dude, it is literally a project and a startup. You have an investment group and your goal is to turn it into a tourist attraction. In the past, Brent has assured us that everything he finds at Cerro Gordo will stay in Cerro Gordo to preserve its history. But in his latest video, he says,
You know, and my mentality from day one has been that everything at Cerro Gordo needs to stay at Cerro Gordo. That said, we also have an extremely expensive hotel just down the way to build. So all that to say, I'm going to try a small online rock shop.
I wouldn't think that Brent cared so much about the money if he wasn't constantly bringing up the money. The reason Dave Sparks helped out Brent wasn't out of the kindness of his heart, no matter what the narration tries to imply.
He said, all right, I got you.
He did it because he was able to monetize it on his own channel, getting multiple videos out of it, with what were most definitely massive sponsor deals. Ironically, a sponsorship for a high-risk insurance company. Dave wasn't even able to get all the concrete he needed for the building. After 2 trips, the cement company refused to come again.
The cement company decided, you know what? No, that road is too dangerous. It's too much of a risk for our drivers. You know, we have much easier jobs everywhere else. We're just not going to do it.
So Brett turned to...
We're taking a little bit different approach. This time, the community that cares so much about this town has all rallied behind it, and we're going to make it happen.
His fans and volunteers again, getting them to come and help mix cement by hand. I do have a lot of respect for people finding alternative ways to live outside of the capitalist hellscape that most of us are trapped in, like our dear friend Shadow, and the off-gridders who are breaking down what their lives are like and can shed light on things that we could change about society to make it a better place for everyone to live. And for most of us, that's why we watch this content. We also fantasize about our cottagecore homestead in the woods, as I clickety-clack on this keyboard next to my fake plants. But for an off-grid grifter, the goal isn't to explore alternatives to capitalism. It's to escape capitalism by using the capital that they've already stored up in their bank.
Yep.
Rich people have always been able to escape capitalism. That's what happens when you become rich. You no longer have to work other people's hours for other people's happiness. And they aren't being honest about doing it on their own. They regurgitate rugged individualism while spending thousands on hired hands. There are also much more sinister pockets of off-grid content that, if you're not paying attention, seem like just any other off-grid video. Yeah, remember all those naked women in the thumbnails? Some of those channels do not give off the air that these women are creating content of their own accord, if you're catching my drift. There are whole off-grid channels that have been confirmed hoaxes, people just pretending to live off-grid in the woods, or even being coerced to beg for money on camera. It's extremely uncomfortable not knowing who's holding that camera. Time for the obligatory Thoreau quote. If a man walk in the woods for love of them half of each day, he is in danger of being regarded as a loafer. But if he spends his whole day as a speculator, shearing off those woods and making the earth bald before her time, he is esteemed an industrious and enterprising citizen, as if a town had no interest in its forests but to cut them down. And even Thoreau needed his mom to do his laundry. So, the reality is, as much as off-gridders love to sell themselves as truly independent or being out there on their own, if you're saying, I'm independent on YouTube, you're not independent. When you use a tool like a hammer, over time, your brain actually starts thinking of that tool as part of your body. And as far as your mind is concerned, you are one with the tool. And I feel like these self-reliant YouTubers prove that this same thinking can also extend to other humans. If you hire someone to do something, tell them what to do, and then they do it, it can feel like you did that thing that you had someone else do. You can feel a certain ownership over it. After all, that was your capital that paid for their labor. That's how executives are able to tell themselves that they're doing all the real hard work of running the company, while the actual laborers do everything on the factory floor or behind the espresso bar. This is why the tool itself is such a powerful symbol in workers' movements. Focusing on the tool restores in our minds the importance of the person holding that tool and the actual labor that goes into production. Society is based on the means of production, but bosses and off-grid grifters often try to obscure the material conditions of that production. This whole subject is extra relevant because I live in LA, where a lack of housing...
Capitalists co-opting the aesthetics of the working class? Why, they would never.
is a crisis. In 2020, as the pandemic raged and Brent was just starting his YouTube channel, a little community started to form in Echo Park. And if you listen to local politicians or the police, they'd tell you horror stories about how terrible the encampment was. But if you went there, you'd see that that wasn't the case at all. And I know this because I went to Echo Park with my family in November of 2020. And what struck me most about walking through the encampment was how chill it was. There were community gardens. People were bartering for supplies or even just giving away stuff for free. It was like this little alternative economy functioning all on its own. But in March of 2021, Echo Park City Council member and the LAPD kicked everyone out of the park. The city claimed that they'd move these people into permanent housing within a year, but a year later, out of about 200 people that were living in the park, less than 10% were in permanent housing, and at least 7 had passed away since being evicted. Unhoused people are the ones living like they're in the Wild West, not Brent. For people without permanent housing, every day is a struggle to find food and shelter. They're harassed by police, rich locals, and vigilantes. They don't have stock accounts or rich family members they can fall back on. And they're not backed by millionaire investors. But living in a tent in a metropolitan area with a population of 13 million people doesn't conjure images of the Wild West. So the media will never portray them the way that they'll portray someone like Brent. Self-reliance is a myth. All of us are interconnected. I think a lot of us learned that lesson the hard way during lockdown. I know that I'm not alone when I speak into a mic or talk into the camera. That's why I love doing what I do. At the end of Brent's last video, he actually came to a similar conclusion.
I am alone, though. Aware.
After spending 3 years alone in Cerro Gordo.
So it has been 3 years.
For the past 3 years.
Over the last 3 years. Over the past 3 years. I see my own memories over the past 3 years. It's been a long 3 years. It's been a challenging 3 years.
3 years that I've been living up here. It has been 3 years.
For the last 3 years.
Past 3 years. So that is 3 years. 36 months 3 years ago. 3 years.
My God.
3 years.
Shut up.
36 months.
Brent tells us.
Bro.
And after a lot of thinking, I don't think it's the best to call this a ghost town anymore.
And you know what? Brent's right. Which is why every single person who gave up their time should demand free stays at the new Cerro Gordo American Hotel Airbnb combination spa and mind tour experience. My
Real.
mustache and I will see you there in about 15 years when it opens. Thank you so much for watching. An extra special thank you to my patrons and everyone watching on
That's
Nebula,
pretty good.
who I am deeply, deeply dependent on. If you enjoyed this one, might I recommend my video on Motel Makeover,
Nebula,
a
you
reality
say.
show about 2 ladies renovating a motel. For profit, if you liked the video.
Man, it's already getting kind of late. I don't have time to cover the rest of the stuff I wanted to cover. Let's see. What was that guy's name? Steve Wallace?
Hey everybody, welcome to Camping with Steve. I found a sign.
I love his voice. It's just so soothing. I don't know. Something about it. He's just so chill.
Hey everybody, welcome to Camping with Steve. I found a sign. And I'm getting dropped off there, so let's do this.
He calls it stealth camping, which is funny. It's like urban or like hidden camping.
Oh yeah, that's perfect. My backpack, and I'm bringing a cot in there. It's gonna be great.
Let's go.
Here we go. Dropped off. Oh boy. There's that feeling. Okay, the highway is like right here. And there are people clearly driving past.
Oh my
Whatever.
God. Right there.
I've gotten away with it for this long. I'm not too concerned. Beautiful woods around here. And this sign, I walk around it and break some traffic, but this is just perfect. Look at this. In we go. All right.
Ain't no way, dude. Oh my God, he's so close.
that's easy. I didn't have to use a rope. I could have just tucked it in between the pieces of wood here. Extra good. So, when there's break in traffic, I'm going to stake the bottom of it down a little further away. Because although the color is correct, any motion is still going to move like a piece of fabric. And, yeah, give me away. On the outside, I have an actual branch going through from one of these hedges, and same over here. So that should make it look a little more natural. But before I get too gung-ho about setting up the cot, it's time to just poke outside for a little bit and see what we can see.
I don't know about that, bro.
I think it's not bad, especially when it gets darker out. It's about 2 hours until darkness, hour and a half until sunset, and perfect time to lay low. Today is a big cot because I don't want to sleep right on the ground. Places like these, I do see evidence that people have been here before. And I don't want to sleep directly on the ground. I can see clearly broken glass right there. So I'll be up off the ground at a nice sitting height, and then this doubles as a chair as well. Okay. This is a shelter if I've ever seen one. Leaves overhead in case it rains. Somewhere soft to lay my head.
Sure, leaves.
So far, so good. I normally don't promote my merch in any serious.
I would be so uncomfortable and nervous, dude. What? He's just on the highway.
Way. But yeah, we got these beer koozies that proclaim to not be a beer. And there's been a surprising development. Step 2. That development being, I have spent most of my YouTube career trying to find a decent merch company, and I finally have one that, after this is the third, the quality seems to be good, the shipping is reasonable. I fought them on the shipping a little bit, so they're really good, and we got such favorites as new designs. But enough of that advertisement. The real part that I want to let you guys know about is they're offering free worldwide shipping on apparel items. So basically your shirts, hoodies, and jackets. Free worldwide shipping if you order 2 pieces of apparel.
He really did fight them. That's a good deal.
Stickers don't count, the beanies don't count, the cups don't count. None of the other stuff counts, but that's a big deal because a lot of the times, like, I'm even hesitant to order my own merch because worldwide shipping gets pricey. Anyway, enough of that stuff. It's out there for a limited time. I'm not sure how long, but it will probably say on the merch site. Anyway, enough about that. Sorry to plug my own merch shamelessly there, but I thought I'd let you guys know about the free shipping they're doing. So anyway. This is about the best sign I've ever seen in my life for camping behind. I'm feeling really comfortable with this location. The traffic noise is to be expected along the highway behind the sign, but overall, it should die down at night and I should sleep quite comfortably here. I'm going to explore the woods around the sign a little bit because there are quite a few good spots when the leaves come out over there. These are like a laurel hedge, like a cherry laurel, and they're green all year, so the leaves have been out. And over in this patch, as you can see, the leaves are starting to sprout. And up the road here, I can see they've got a red light there, so we'll be clear in one direction here. And I'll just slip over, go for a walk in there, and get some views of this from the other hidden spots over yonder. In these woods is as fine a spot as any. However, it's not right behind the sign. And I've been looking for these signs constantly. Everyone I drive past, I check it out because they're actually really fun to camp behind. And the more in plain sight, the more exciting it is for me. If a spot is too good for
He like gets a thrill out of it. Oh my god, couldn't be me. I would be too scared.
stealth camping, it's just not that fun. And if it's too lousy for stealth camping, I'm going to get busted. So this is right in the perfect zone as far as my knowledge on sleeping behind road signs. Further into the woods, this is a stealth camper's paradise, really. All this soft moss to sleep on. Don't see any evidence of bears or other animals that could be of concern. That could mean mosquitoes in the future, but
could.
What a beautifully risky
Definitely
little spot. Oh no. Okay. Back to my sign.
Bro. There's nothing. Oh my god. It's crazy.
Great. Spilled a little step 2 there. So, how good of a stealth camping spot is this? There's no way to know. My fingers are crossed. If you don't know if it's a good spot or not, you pretty much just have to hunker down and find out. Looks like a bunch of garbage left from some previous stealth campers. So I've got garbage bags in the car, and tomorrow when I get picked up, I'll grab what I can and try to make this place as pristine as possible.
Oh shit.
And of course the police have pulled up in full view of me. They're just kind of sitting there. So I gotta keep an eye on that.
No.
Because I don't like that one little bit. Alright, moderately nerve-wracking, but at this point, I've done this so many times that getting that false sense of confidence. Anyway, I do have to remain vigilant. Now, sleeping bags left in a compression sack need to inflate.
Got cocky. Flew too close to the sun.
Back to their natural insulating power. Another interesting fact, a lot of these synthetic insulation in these things, you can't just leave them in that bag crushed down all the time. When you bring them home, you're supposed to puff them up and hang them up so they don't lose their micro lofting insulating power.
Damn.
One of the few things
I didn't know that.
Another thing I learned, and this is just funny and has nothing to do with camping, but my hoodie will zip onto my jacket. Look at that. Like, same zipper manufacturer, but I think that's just neat.
Oh my god.
Let me try to prop up this hot a little bit.
It's just
It's
neat.
slanty. I'm sure I can sleep on it. Won't be a problem, really. But hey, a dime. Ooh, American dime.
Bro, what are you doing?
Big shout out to first responders, and I hope whatever they're attending works out really good. I always like to give good thoughts, and you know, somebody on the other end of that ambulance is having the worst day of their life. So, hoping for the best. I know just what I need. In the woods over there, I saw a chunk of 2x6, and that will level out the cot just perfectly. It's almost dark enough I can walk around without any fear of being spotted, but not quite there. All right, here we go.
Stealth. We're stealthing.
Seems there's a couple of street lights outside, and that should hopefully help me keep down my use of the flashlight tonight, because I gotta cook back here. I was gonna sneak over to the park beside me, but with the police resting there, I think that might be a spot they stopped as a speed trap. Of course, these spots always seem to be right beside a police speed trap, but yeah, I gotta cook back
Classic.
here, and we'll have to keep it stealthy. I will address, it's a really bare bones setup tonight here.
Fucking ACAB.
I'm not expecting rain, but if there was, the leaves will provide me some cover. I just really have a sleeping bag, cot, and a piece of camo. And I've learned with hobbies like this, there's an arc of the gear you get. You start out with nothing, you know, maybe a hammock or a sleeping bag, and then you get all this stuff until you're carrying a huge backpack, and then you whittle it back down, and you end up basically with what you started with. And that happened with gold mining as well. Like when I first started gold mining, I went out with a pan and a shovel. Then I got all these sluices, high bankers, pumps, blue bowl classifiers, all this gold mining stuff. And then when I got back down to it,
Fuck, I do not know any of those words. I don't know what the fuck you just said.
I just ended up with little stream sluice. You don't have to bring a pump and a bunch of water and stuff, but that's, I think with everything, you end up getting all this gear you think you need, then at the end of it, you end up with kind of what you started with at the beginning, but you figured out exactly what you need and what you don't need. So my 2 cents on that issue. I have a slight concern about how the camo netting is going to look for the oncoming traffic with the headlights right at it. It will definitely not look like shrubbery, and I like shrubbery. So I'll take another peek and see just what it looks like. And I know I shouldn't do this, but it's the thrill of the stealth camping. Get out and take a peek at things. Oh, that is just perfect. That actually looks better than it did in the daytime. I think it's smooth
He's
sailing.
crazy. I think he kind of wants to get caught.
I think in a little bit here, I'm gonna cook over in the woods back where I grabbed that piece of wood from, because it is bear country, which is, I've got some bear spray with me. Always good to have in these situations. But also to keep the food aroma away from behind the sign. Because I've tried to make this as stealthy as possible, which might backfire on me if I actually need help as a bear is mauling me and nobody can see me from the road. So we'll do that, and then I should be good in here, aside from the fact that I spilled beer right on the bed where I'm sleeping, but one problem at a time.
Yeah.
This really
I mean, I don't think a bear's coming that close to the road. I don't know though.
reminds me of the roundabout as far as just stay inside and you're going to be fine. But I do want to cook out there where I can actually use the flashlight, because otherwise it's going to be a dark cooking experience in here. That surprised all of us. Okay. A little bit of olive oil. Ooh, that's like a whole half a chicken. I believe I've cooked my chicken. Chili peppers. This olive oil will do. The garlic spilled, but that's okay. We got parsley. You definitely need some meat, of course cheese, which is a little grated Parmesan. One of these things of...
This is so fancy.
Wow. It's a meal for 5.
It's so much.
Holy macaroni. Let me just stir this up here.
Let's
Ow.
go.
Yeah, okay.
Nice.
That's actually turned out really, really good. And I have no idea how I'm going to eat all of it, but I'm sure going to try.
Just a bear behind him. Imagine. Sleep cam. Let's go.
Well, good morning. That wasn't bad at all, actually. Kind of used to traffic noise, having grown up in a city for a lot of my life.
I guess so.
It's just, you have your window open, you're going to hear that. Doesn't seem to matter. You find a way to sleep. Life finds a way. The cot held up pretty good. I think it's time to begin the day. My emergency pillow. What am I going to do in the summer when I don't have a jacket with me all the time for a pillow? Probably the goal of these signs is they want to welcome you to the town. They don't want to welcome you to the sign. So, I don't know.
Yeah, bro.
This is
Yeah.
proved to be a very worthwhile stop tonight. Yeah, probably better that I didn't see that garbage in the bright daylight, because there's some stuff in there I don't want to touch. While we're waiting for the ride to show up, we're gonna walk across the road and I'll show you the real gem here. You're gonna be kicking me for not camping there. Let's go check it out. Whatever you do, don't do what Steve does. So they're putting a new sign in there.
True.
Yesterday, they were working on it like right when I was going to show
Pog, new sign to stay behind.
up. So I showed up a little later than I wanted to. But you can see what they're doing here. Out with the old, in with the new. I thought it would have been funny if I were camping there and they were working on it, but it's probably better that didn't happen. Look at this. In this park,
Jesus.
They seem pretty militant about keeping me out, and that's okay. It was fine behind the sign, but there's a beautiful lake in here.
Man. Pretty. So nice.
I could live a happy life here. So I probably could have camped somewhere around here. It would have been a lot more
nice-ass
picturesque. But as you see, we're mowing the lawn already. And that'd be a rude awakening. No way. I think I got perfect timing. I think that's my ride. Just as I'm on the way back. Aha.
Let's go.
Haven't even got back to the woods yet. Here's my ride if I've ever seen it. Garbage bag. Okay. There we go. Rear view mirror is a good start. I'm not touching anything wet. Oh, why can't things be nice? Hey, full load coming out of here today. All right, so thanks everybody for watching. Please consider subscribing to this gong show of a channel. I can't promise it's going to get any better, but it'll probably get weirder. So YouTube seems to like weird. Unlike high school, they didn't like that back then.
True.
So, cheers everybody.
We'll accept you. We won't call you weird. We love you, Steve.
Stay tuned, and the days may be a little off. I do try to stick to Thursdays for uploads, but you know, there might be different days involved. So be sure you subscribe so you know when I'm doing a foolish act again like this. Thanks.
Doxed. What? You're just showing your plates, bro? Going back to get the camera. Oh my god. Nerd. Why did he leave that part in? It's kind of endearing. It's quite cute. Alrighty. That'll be it for the night. I think I'll be back tomorrow. I'll do my best to be back tomorrow. Do that. Good? Good. Okay. Bye.
Back then, yeah, I never talked at all. Ashes, yeah, let them bridges fall. I've been way better than before. Posted with my cash standing tall. Hey, yo, watch this. Got a foreign gold switching for my necklace. Got $100,000 on my checklist. All the money you made, that's my work slip. You ain't learning. I be a new person. I be making money fast. They be so determined. I be working every day. Yeah, I'm up on my circuit. Get me another diamond chain, made it from the surface. I been hurting. Would you live with me straight till the end? Baby, don't leave my back. I'm too spent. This is what I got, yeah, it's how it been. But that's okay, cause I'm making it. Don't like me, well, I'm on the road. High speed, chase, that's what I love. Can't see what I can't control. Did it once, yeah, do it once again. Watch my father, yeah, he taught me how to win. Cop new product, money taught me how to spin. Waves like water, music taught me how to swim. I'ma fill my bottle way up to the brim.
Toss it all. Ashes, yeah, let them bridges fall. I've been way better than before. Posted with my cash standing tall.
It was beautiful, yeah, together.